Hi, be advised the recording is starting, and Mayor, I'll give you the signal when it's time to start the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, Mayor, you may begin when you're ready.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular Matthews Board of Commissioners meeting for November 23rd, 2020. I'll remind everyone that due to Mecklenburg County's COVID-19 Phase 3 order, this meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners will be conducted remotely using the Zoom virtual meeting platform. The Town of Matthews is committed to transparency and robust public participation during these challenging times. Also, I think we're all getting pretty used to this, but for those that may be watching, I'll remind everyone that the mayor and commissioners will vote on each item by roll call vote, meaning each member will be polled to individually state their vote for the record. They will also raise their hand to visually indicate their vote. I'd like to start with some introductions this evening. We have Commissioner Dave Bland here, Commissioner Jeff Miller, Commissioner John Urban, our Planning Director Jay Camp, Assistant Town Manager Becky Hawk, Commissioner Ken McCool, Mayor Pro Tem Renee Garner, Town Clerk Pino, our Town Attorney Charles Buckley, who we can't see, but I think he's with us. Our Communications Director Maureen Keith, and I believe our Town Manager Hazen Blodgett is also, there we go, somewhere in the ether, and also Commissioner Larry Whitley. Larry, can you possibly turn your camera on, sir? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I have a little difficulty trying to get on.
All right, we'll start with a moment of reflection for Mayor Pro Tem Renee Garner.
I have a poem tonight from Wendell Berry, and it's titled "Stay Home." I will wait here in the fields to see how well the rain brings on the grass. In the labor of the fields, longer than a man's life, I am home. Don't come with me. You stay home too. I will be standing in the woods where the old trees move only with the wind and then with gravity. In the stillness of the trees, I am home. Don't come with me. You stay home too.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Garner. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. And again, we have there a much better representation of the American flag than the little one I used to hold up, but please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Move on to the next agenda item. Lori, there she is, I see. We have a very special guest that is joining us tonight. District 103 House Representative Rachel Hunt. Welcome, Rachel. So glad you could join us tonight.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
So I'd like to ask Representative Hunt if you could give us an update with what's going on in Raleigh these days. And then I'd like to review our legislative agenda a little bit with you.
Absolutely. So
Thank you
all so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I am so glad this week we just had an issue that Commissioner Miller reached out. A business needed an expedited ABC order, and we were able to help get that, make that happen. So I love when I can work with my commissioners in Matthews to make things happen for our people in District 103. I look forward to working with you all in tandem over many issues in the coming legislative year, the biennium. We have not met yet to have our meeting about what the legislative agenda is going to look like. We do, however, know a few things. We do know that we are going to hopefully get more COVID money. There's going to be another package coming from the federal government, which will help all of us, hopefully state and local governments. We do know that we are going to have a huge problem meeting our budgetary restrictions of having a balanced budget. So that will call into account many things we would like to spend money on. And that because of COVID and so many other things, there's going to be a problem this year. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. You know, this is going to be a big redistricting year. It's going to set their lines for the next 10 years. That will take a lot of the time of the legislature in the very beginning of our biennium. But we are going to try as hard as we can to make sure people feel as little pain from this situation as possible, because we know how much everyone has been hurting. We have had all the unemployment benefit situations, hundreds and hundreds of calls to my office that we've tried to help people get their benefits. We know that people are still hurting. Businesses are still going under. The PPP loans have run out, and so has the unemployment, the benefits that were given. So we know people are in dire straits. You know, I've gotten calls from folks that say, I am selling plasma to buy groceries for my family. That should never happen, folks. We know that. We are a better country, state, and locality than that. So I will be working my hardest to make sure we can make our citizens' lives as good as they can be. And I promise you, once the vaccine comes, things will be very, very different. And we're very happy that now there are 3 vaccines on the fast track that should be here by the end of the year. So I am very excited to work with you on your legislative agenda. That is normally done in person, but obviously we cannot do that this year. But yes, let's talk about that. I'm excited about that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. Before we go on, do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments for Representative Hunt?
I just want to reiterate the thanks to Representative Hunt for helping one of our local restaurants, bars, understand the logistics between ABC Commission and ALE and all the channels they had to go through to figure out how they could possibly open. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller.
All right. So Hazen, our town manager, I see that you joined us at least temporarily. Are you still on, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, has this been formally sent to Representative Hunt, or is she seeing this for the first
Yes,
time?
sir. We sent it last week. Lori sent it.
Okay. So we'll go over this quickly, and I certainly want to encourage any of the commissioners or town staff, if you have comments, to jump in. Don't let. So the first thing on our legislative agenda is local government revenues and tax reform. Several items there. Number 1, work with our North Carolina General Assembly delegation to allow for expanded use of the prepared food and beverage tax to include flexibility to use these funds to improve landscaping and build structured parking to enhance the visitor's experience to Matthews. So many of these are kind of self-explanatory. Representative Hunt, if you want to comment, or any of the commissioners, please jump in.
I'll make one comment if I can, Mayor.
Sure.
When we went to Rock Hill and saw what they do with their beautification of their off ramps from the interstate and their main drag into town, we asked them how they were able to do that. And one of the points that they emphasized was they're allowed to use their tourism funds to pretty up people as they come off the highway and get gas or might stop in for lunch. And they said that the beautification adds to the feeling of safety. And if someone gets off at exit 51 or 33 as they're going from point A to point B, and they do that once a year, they're more prone to get off at that same exit once they're familiar with it, if it's pretty and appears safe, etc. And that's a disparity between North and South Carolina that I think might need some attention.
Okay. Thank you for that, for Commissioner Miller. Yeah, we've certainly worked very arduously in Matthews to follow the letter of the law on how we can use these funds, and if it could be expanded a little bit, that would be very helpful to us. Second item is any continued tax reform efforts at the state level should be at least revenue neutral regarding its impact on Matthews. Kind of self-explanatory there, no unfunded mandates. Thirdly, Matthews supports efforts to enact an option for municipalities to enact a 1/4 cent local option sales tax. Hazen, would you care to comment on that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I think Representative Hunt, I think the general feeling is that we are 100% capable of governing, what closest representation closest to home is, I guess, the best, the best governance in the state of North Carolina has, I'd say, taken away authority from the towns here in the recent past. And here's just an example, and it'd still have to go through a referendum. So it'd still be the will of the people, but revenue wise, our hands are kind of tied, and we have a very dynamic community that's growing, and our citizens have a super high expectation of services. I know you're aware of that. So any flexibility would be greatly appreciated.
And again, if any commissioner or other town staff would like to comment, please jump in. I can see most of you, but maybe not all of you, so just jump in. Don't be shy. Another section of this is Matthews opposes efforts to changing sales tax formulas to redirect a portion of these revenues away from urban counties. And I think that's for obvious reasons. We have, I was at a transportation meeting the other day, and they said that in our general area, there's 14% of the population in North Carolina lives in these few counties surrounding Mecklenburg. So we're certainly, I think it is equitable to distribute our fair share of the tax revenue. And I kind of blended B and E, but Matthews opposes any legislation imposing unfunded mandates, obviously, again. Can't say that enough. Item 2, government closest to the people governs best, as our town manager just said. We oppose laws that centralize authority in Raleigh and Washington, D.C. to undermine the ability of local elected officials. And we really do feel that we're closest to the folks here and can do the best job governing. So
yeah. So let me just comment on what we've talked about so far. As you all may know, North Carolina is unfortunately a Dillon state versus a home rule state, which means that Raleigh, the North Carolina legislature, has the ability to govern what municipalities can and cannot pass for their own people. I happen to disagree with that. I feel like municipalities are closest to the people. They should have the autonomy to make their own rules because they know best what is best for their own people. So several of the things that have come, that we've talked about so far come under that mandate. And, several of us are going to be working to change that. But I want you all to know that I completely agree that you need the autonomy to do what is best for your people. And you are the closest and you do know best, not the folks in Raleigh.
well, thank you for that very much. Yeah, it seems I've been an elected official for 7 years, and it seems like the entire time I've been elected, Raleigh keeps taking away authority from our town. And I said, at some point, we're just going to be a figurehead and Raleigh can run Matthews. So we appreciate that.
Yes.
Anybody else want to comment on that? Commissioner Bland?
I think the one thing that jumps to my mind is like the situation, as I understand it, about fracking, that people my next door neighbor can decide he wants to frack in his backyard.
Yeah.
And the state legislature said that the town, we have a lot of people that live close together. It's a lot different than people that live in rural areas. And I think that's a lot of what we're talking about, those types of rules and regulations that really don't make sense for urban communities.
Yeah. Yes, North Carolina has so many differences in, the urban versus rural, the western area versus the eastern area, and then the urban areas. No one knows what is best for those areas except for the people that are in them, and that's you all. Most legislators have not been city council people or county commissioners. So we have no idea what works best for people in a very, centralized area. We may live there, but we are in Raleigh a lot of the year. So I completely agree that we need to defer to the folks that are in your positions as to what is best for you. And that is, whether to use beautification funds, as you spoke about, like South Carolina allows, whether it's allowing municipalities to have their own governing power and have autonomy, or even just, any other area like the billboards that we're going to talk about later on. There are very big differences in what different communities need and what they want, and they should be allowed to have their own say.
That is our next item. That was a good segue, but planning and providing services for urban growth. And of course, it was a burr in the saddle for everyone here with regards to billboard legislation and aesthetics bills and things like that, again, where our authority was undermined and things were passed that we don't think, I think in general, I speak for the entire board, that were necessarily good for Matthews. They may be good for parts of the state, but they weren't good for Matthews.
Right.
I think we've already hit on that. Item 4, protection of locally developed infrastructure. The town of Matthews is opposed to the forced taking of any local government infrastructure as it sets a dangerous precedent for the state of North Carolina. I think the prime example was the Charlotte Airport or the Asheville water system, et cetera. Certainly I don't know that we have anything that large that Raleigh's interested in, but nonetheless, that's a valid point.
Yes.
Item 5, transportation. The current methods of paying for transportation improvements in North Carolina are inadequate as revenues are declining due to the structure of the gas tax, and this needs are increasing. However, it is important that proposed changes to legislation be monitored, local government input be solicited and considered, that parties work to improve the relationship between the North Carolina Department of Transportation and local government. And we all certainly realize that the gas tax is going to not be sufficient to take care of our needs going forward. So you have a very big item on your plate, I think, in Raleigh to address.
I know. Now, there is, this possible bond that may come up next year that will address the needs of our entire area, a regional area, which would include, Gastonia, some of Cabarrus County, some of Union County. So we have, we are starting to look at transportation in a regional way. And we know that the Charlotte region has needs for transportation greater than almost any other place in North Carolina, except perhaps the Triangle. And we need to have a plan. And there is one being, put forth by folks in the mayor's office to deal with all this. And it would include, bicycle paths, trails, light rail, and roads. So that may be what's coming up. That will not be before the legislature because it would be passed through a bond that would be voted on. But I just want people to be aware that that is going on now. It will be, rolled out to the public, I would think, pretty soon. And it would, I think, go a long way to addressing a lot of the needs that our region has and to making us a better region for businesses and for folks moving here to address all of our transportation needs. Now, of course, the Department of Transportation in Raleigh has had some real issues with finances. We all know that. And we are trying to make sure that they are monitored correctly going forward so that all of the tax money, because that's your money, everybody, that's being spent on these projects is being spent correctly and held to accounting by the legislature because we're the ones who grant them that money. So there are two different kind of things going on.
Have you heard any talk of a usage tax, like you pay so much per how many miles you drive?
I have not heard of that right now, but again, we haven't gone back into session. And we haven't been given our legislative agenda from the folks in charge of the legislature yet. So we will be, looking out for that. And I expect, I'm happy to come back to these meetings and brief you all as often as you would like. I can come every other month. I can come once a month, whatever you all would like, once we go back into session the end of January.
Well, that's fantastic. I think when you're in session, we would like to see you at least every other month. That would be
Sure.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
I have heard that a few other states have tried that usage model. I don't know how it's working. I haven't followed up with that, but
Right.
it seems pretty equitable. There is some concern about people that drive gas hogs versus somebody that buys a very, an electric vehicle that gets great
Right.
mileage, and they're both being punished equally by the usage tax. So that
Right.
probably needs to be worked out.
Yeah, I agree.
Just another point on transportation. We support the strategic transportation investments as a data-driven process so that projects are not politically determined which ones will go forward based on need. Obviously, the Charlotte, Mecklenburg area has got a lot of transportation needs for sure.
Right.
And we've had, I don't know if anybody recalls how many, but 8 or 10 major NCDOT projects significantly delayed here that were
Yes.
supposed to go through, and many of which were going to help traffic, which seems to be the number one concern of our constituents. So,
Right. Absolutely.
Item number 6, House Bill 972, which passed in 2016, should be amended. The law made the courts the decision makers of whether and when the public and others could see and hear police video and recordings. The court system can be slow to respond to issues in general, particularly when civil unrest occurs. Videos and other recordings need to be made available to local governing bodies at the discretion of the police chief after consultation with the manager. And of course, this was especially of concern during the heightened racial tensions we had earlier this summer. The need to be fully transparent and to share as much information as we can with the public. We certainly don't want to get tied up in courts and have a lot of civil unrest.
Right. And I will look into that.
Item 7, seek special legislation that would allow organizations like the Matthews Free Medical Clinic to lease a town-owned building for longer than 10 years. Hazen, do you want to, or you or Becky want to speak to the issues we had with that, because we have to put it up for open bid and.
Exactly. Yeah, so we got special legislation for the chamber years ago. I came here in 2003, it was before that, so they could stay there longer than 10 years. The Free Medical Clinic provides a great service to our community. I think we're lucky to have something like that. However, the state law says, look, you got to go out every 10 years and put it on the market, right? And what we're worried about, putting it on the market and then boom, somebody comes in and offers us more money. Now, maybe we can say, well, I'm not, so it'd be much easier if we knew, look, we can negotiate with this nonprofit that's providing service to the community and not have to be hemmed in by the bid process.
Right. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Yeah, that's very, very important.
Are you familiar with our free medical clinic?
I am not. I'm very happy that we have one. I know that now more than ever, that sort of a service is needed and is in high demand. And we don't anticipate that demand going away anytime soon,
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, they are utilized at capacity, so it's a great benefit to our citizens.
And once the vaccine comes, I would like to visit it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I will extend that invitation to Representative Hunt as a
Thank you.
member of the board of the Free Medical Clinic. So we'll invite you and have you by.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 8, litter pickup on state maintained roads. Many of the roads, as you probably are aware, particularly in Charlotte and through our community on 485 and if you go down to 77, just really cluttered with litter. It doesn't seem like that's been a priority to pick up that litter for quite some time. So we're hearing more and more from people who live here, how come there's so much garbage along the streets?
Right.
I'd also like to see legislation to punish people that throw it out there.
Right. Which I think we've had in the past. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So Expanded tree buffers. We would support legislation that allows for expanded tree buffers. Commissioner Urban and I both, I guess, started our volunteerism in the town of Matthews, or I certainly did, and I know John spent a long time on the appearance and tree board. So, and all of us hold trees as a great asset to our community, and we'd like to be able to, with not being too prescriptive, but to increase the tree buffer so that we can kind of force developers to save a little more of those, especially, old hardwood trees. We hate to see a 50 or 60-year-old oak tree cut down always.
And, my grandfather was a tree farmer, so I have a great love of trees. And let me just say, trees are one of the ways we are combating climate change. That is not, a Democratic or Republican stance. That is fact, scientifically based. So the more trees we have, the better we can do in combating that. And so beyond the pandemic, we still have to go back to what we're still going to have once the vaccine is here, which is the climate reality that we desperately need to plant more trees. Remember, 1 trillion trees, they've said, could go a long way in helping us combat climate change. And so I am completely I completely agree with this, and I will be looking for some of my Republican brethren to help me with some legislation on both of these things, the litter and the tree buffers.
That'd be great. We certainly understand that if you're going to build a building, you have to cut trees down, but
yes,
maybe, not quite so many. And what we're finding on many developments is just a very thin band along the perimeter of the property are saved and everything else is cut down.
Right.
We'd like to increase our tree ordinance just a bit, not
Sure.
anything drastic, but just
Sure.
save a few more trees.
Yeah, and that there's a way that can be done. It's not rocket science. So
Right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, you're not just specifically talking to tree buffers, or you're not talking a little more comprehensive tree preservation, canopy type of conversation, because buffers don't necessarily pertain to tree canopy save and things like that, open space and things of that nature.
I think we're talking about both. Anywhere we can save trees. Remember, one of the billboard bills that came through allowed trees to be cut down along the highway for a half a mile in front of some ridiculous length. Things like that. Anything. Good point, Commissioner Urban. Not just tree buffers. Any way that we can encourage more tree save anywhere. Good point. Item 10, making broadband a utility. If the General Assembly designated broadband as a utility, then towns can require all fiber optic cable to be in one conduit. And our concern is just continually digging the infrastructure up to put different brands of broadband in. We'd like to just lay down one pipe and let them all go through that.
yeah. And I've been one of the sponsors of broadband access all over the state in the last biennium, and am completely on board with that. Broadband is now what pen and paper were years ago. With the pandemic, people had to have access to broadband, not just to go to school, but also to work in many cases. So we need desperately to have broadband all over this entire state. Children should not have to go to a parking lot and sit in a bus to do their homework or to people to go to work. So this is something that, again, is a bipartisan, issue. All of our people are being affected, especially people in, the very rural areas. But also there are a lot of people here in Mecklenburg County. So we have got to fix this. There are ways to do this. This is one of them, requiring the fiber optic cables be in one conduit. We know we can work with, many of our co-ops and our other, industries that know what to do. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So we just need to work together all over the state, Republicans and Democrats, and make this happen.
Yeah, I know early on in the pandemic, Mayor Lyles in Charlotte, I believe through private donations, was able to get mobile hotspots set up, because we literally had children sitting in McDonald's and things like that to do their homework.
Yeah,
So,
really.
is a very serious issue.
That's right.
And then finally, we also support the North Carolina League of Municipalities and the Metro Mayor's legislative agendas, which I'm sure you are familiar with, because we all had input on those as well. And a lot of them touch on a lot of the same issues that we just talked about.
Excellent. Excellent.
So I think we've gone over that
Great.
remarkably quickly, but does anyone have any other comments or questions for Representative Hunt while we have her?
Mayor, I'd just like to thank Representative Hunt for coming and being part of this and sharing this and working as we go forward with a lot of these local issues. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You know, I just want to say I am very, very happy to be here. As I said, I would be very happy to come as often as you want me to let you know how we can work together in Raleigh to get these things done for our people. I want to make sure you all know how to reach me at all times. My email is Rachel, RACHEL.hunt@ncleg.net. And my phone number at my office is 919-733-5800. So anyone who is watching tonight, and of course, my commissioners and my staff members, any of you all, any issue that you have and that you need help from my office, please do not hesitate to reach out. We are very, very happy to help you all. And I want to wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. Please be safe. That is my most fervent hope for all of our people right now to get through this difficult time.
Thank you very much. We really do appreciate you joining us tonight. And I believe right after we had our election to seat the current board, we all met and we said, we want to have our representatives come often, and then COVID hit.
Yeah, I know.
That kind of
Right.
put a roadblock up for everything, but we intend to follow through on that. That was the unanimous thoughts of everybody on this board. So thank you so much. You also have a very good and safe Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. All right. Lori, can you just mention who else we have on the docket? Have you been able to reach out to some of our other folks? Representatives?
County Commissioner Susan Rodriguez McDowell will be at our next meeting, and I am working on the 2021 calendar now.
Okay. Lori and I have talked about, I don't know how far up the ladder you want to go, but we've talked about certainly having Congressman Bishop and perhaps, Tom Tillis. We probably won't go to the presidential level, but I think we can go have those that represent us come talk to the town of Matthews. So that was great. Let's move on to agenda item number 6, receive an update on COVID-19 from Emergency Operations Center Commander, I almost got through that without stuttering, Rob Kinnenberg. Rob.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today is day 255 of dealing with COVID. As of this morning at 9 o'clock, Mecklenburg County had 41,008 cases and 433 deaths. This has been an exciting 2-week period, especially today. Governor Cooper extended phase 3 on November 10th with Executive Order 176, which reduced the mass gathering indoor attendance limit to 10 people and maintained the outdoor gathering limit at 50. Restrictions enacted in previous executive orders number 163 and 169 continue, and phase 3 was set to continue through December 4th. Today, and I know Hazen sent a link to the newest executive order, but I'll try to break that down for you a little bit. Citing evidence presented by the CDC from several studies validating the effectiveness of wearing cloth face coverings, Governor Cooper issued Executive Order number 180 today, effective on the 25th. and runs through December 11th, strengthening mask requirements across all businesses and activities. Effectively, the executive order requires face coverings for all persons 5 years of age and older, in all places outside the home, in all business occupancies except for restaurant patrons actively eating or drinking, all persons outdoors when not all persons are from the same household, whenever 6-foot social distancing cannot be guaranteed, and the order treats breweries, wineries, and the like with the same restrictions as restaurants. The order pertains to all schools, both public and private and charter, all modes of public transportation, and all workplaces are subject to the stricter rules. Retail establishments greater than 15,000 square feet must have at each public entrance a worker who is responsible for ensuring patrons wear face coverings and that occupancy limits are in compliance. The order eliminates face covering honor system verbiage that was in a previous order and authorizes state and local law enforcement agencies to cite individuals and businesses for violations of this and earlier executive order face covering requirements. The order also empowers law enforcement to cite for trespass and any other such law that a person may violate for refusing to wear required face coverings. Chief Pennington sent out an email today. He and other local police departments will meet tomorrow to ensure that the order is being consistently applied across Mecklenburg County. Total cumulative case count, like I said earlier, is 41,008, which is a 12.8% increase in 14 days. The daily new 7-day average continues to show increase with 200 per 100,000 population affected by the virus, and the percentage of those testing positive hovering around 8.8%. Mecklenburg County is experiencing significant to severe community spread. Deaths have increased by 5.6%. We are seeing an average of 368 new cases a day for a positivity rate of 8.8%. Earlier this week, Atrium reported a 36-hour spike in their number of overall hospitalizations. The average number of hospitalized patients is near the peak earlier this year. The social distancing index remains about 35 as of November 14th. Earlier, the state rolled out a 3-tiered county by county reporting graphic showing each county's status with regard to cases, capacity, and matrix trends in yellow, orange, and red based on the status. Under the state's new color coding system, Mecklenburg is currently yellow, but we are trending toward orange if things continue to go the way they're going. Union and Lincoln are also yellow. Catawba, Iredale, and Stanley are orange, and Gaston is red. As of today, 52 first responders are offline from 16 agencies due to COVID. We continue to test and refine the testing for first responders and healthcare workers. There is an extremely high demand for COVID testing as college students return home and families get ready for Thanksgiving travel. Most testing sites are scheduling a minimum of 3 days out, and county drive-through clinics have experienced long lines. Today at Bojangles, they reached maximum capacity at 1 p.m. Bojangles is open 7 days a week from 10 to 6. And at Southeast Health on Billingsley, they are open from 1 to 5. Our learning pod for residents' children at Cruise Road continues to serve students and is projected to continue through December. But if CMS decides to close schools, we need to revisit our capability going forward. So things we're dealing with going forward. Again, DHS has pushed local enforcement through Executive Order 180. Civil penalties are one way to seek compliance. Violations of the order are misdemeanors. Unfortunately, the district attorney has stated that with the current court case backlog, they had their first jury trial since March last week. So misdemeanors aren't going to get a whole lot of attention. CMS K through 5 students went back to classrooms in November. There have been a few cases of COVID reported in the elementary school community. Whether or not schools stay open is a question. Middle school was supposed to return today, and high school in December. Whether these schools will or will remain open is in question. Holiday decisions are on the minds of most families this week. All we can do is encourage people not to have large extended family gatherings. Post-election protest has been minimal. There is a report of a transportation union strike in the next couple weeks, which threatens to affect holiday online shopping deliveries and our supply chains. Several stores around Mecklenburg County are reporting food and paper goods shortages again. Second Harvest and Loaves and Fishes pantries are running very low. And again, law enforcement's going to have to figure out the best way to comply with Executive Order 180. So that is my report. I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I have a couple of questions, Chief. The first is there any way to see the way that they used to present the metrics so that we could see it by zip code? I can't find that online anymore. And
I haven't looked for it, but I can try to find it.
Okay. Also, the last time I did look, I looked at the outbreaks in Matthews, and there were 2, one in a private school and one at a senior care facility. Are those still going on, or are there additional or fewer? Or
as of today, I think the only one that's considered in outbreak status is Carrington.
Okay, that's good news. Not for Carrington, but
no, we have currently we have 144 town residents in isolation in 104 different locations.
And do you know, well, I'm sure you do know, how that relates to what our cases have been in the past, or even at the height of?
We're probably near our peak at this point. It's kind of a rolling list. So it's 14 days after someone goes on, they usually come off.
Right. And this is sort of a general statement for everybody and not just the chief, but if you didn't watch the governor's press conference earlier today, they had the mayor of Greensboro come on, and she spoke about how they're enforcing mask wearing with restaurant service workers, and it's worth revisiting on the Facebook or site or on the governor's website.
Commissioner Willie.
Chief, do you know how many people we have that's in the hospital in Matthews for COVID?
No, I do not know that, sir.
Okay. The next is not a question, but more of information. Mount Moriah is holding its third testing site this coming Wednesday, the 25th. Atria Health has partnered with us the third time, and it'll be from 8 o'clock until 2:30. It is free. You don't have to get out of your car. You can test you, and it's a lot of you have already tested, but they have agreed to come back once a month until we get vaccine out to the masses of the people. So after this month, the third Thursday in each month, there will be a testing site at Mount Moriah, the third Thursday in each month, starting in December, going forward, from 8 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. And it's free, and they encourage testing. That's what we found out now, is that the more testing we can do, and I know I'm getting tested once a month, and I think it's just a good thing because you can test negative this day and tomorrow you can be positive. So all of
Larry,
you, I did send a thing out to Hazen today, flyer, and most of you know that as well too, but you're invited.
Larry, can you repeat the date, please, sir?
Tomorrow is going to be, Wednesday, the 25th, is going to be the third time from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And going forward, December 4th, it'll be the third Thursday in each month, same time.
And that's open to anybody in the community, whether or not you have symptoms or not.
You don't have to have symptoms. You just want to be tested because maybe you come in contact with somebody, or you just want to know for yourself. So.
Well, I was tested last time at your church, and it's a pretty painless and quick thing. So I hope a lot of folks will take advantage of that. Any other questions or comments for Chief Kinenberg?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Rob. I'd like to share a quick story. My son went with my wife to Costco this past weekend, and they have a policy that Costco has that you have to have a mask to go into the store. And apparently a lady put the mask on and then immediately took it off when she got into the store and said she didn't believe in masks and she wasn't going to wear it. And so she did her shopping maskless and came up to pay, and they refused to check her out. They said, put your mask on or we're not going to ring this stuff up. So I don't know how it ended up, but it seems there's a lot of peer pressure now to abide, at least when you're in close proximity. Another thing that I saw today on television, one of the news channels was speaking about all the people traveling for Thanksgiving, and I believe they said there's about 50 million, something like that, that are traveling for Thanksgiving. And he said, if you are in any major airport, there's a 100% chance you're in close proximity with someone with COVID. That was pretty eye-opening to hear that there's no doubt if you're in Charlotte's airport walking around, there are people amongst you that have COVID. So you hope that they're taking the precautions there. I hope everybody that's watching us tonight will heed the words of a lot of the health officials. And if you are getting together with family, make it a small gathering, eat outside if possible, wear masks, etc. Be safe. Certainly don't want any more people getting sick. There's too many. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to agenda item number 7. Are there any items to be added to the agenda, Mr. Town Manager? You are on mute.
No, sir, Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry, I was looking down. I don't know if you did the head shake indicating negative there, but. All right, we'll move on to item 8, public comment. I understand we have a couple folks signed up for public comment tonight.
We do. Our first will be Sandy Lee, and then second will be Howard Lavender. Ms. Lee, Jay is going to put a 4-minute timer on the screen, and when that starts, you may begin.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Lee, and I would like to thank the mayor, the Mayor Pro Tem and County Commissioners for allowing me to address an item on the agenda tonight, the proposal to rename Stumptown Park. I chose to move to Matthews 8 years ago when I retired as Assistant Superintendent in Davidson County Schools. And one of the many things that I love about Matthews is our parks and all the events that we offer free or of little charge to the community. For that reason, less than a year after I moved to Matthews, I applied to became a member of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resource Advisory Committee. So I've served on that committee for 7 years. I've also served as a member of the Matthews Live Board of Directors for 3 years. Since I've lived in Matthews, I've seen how valuable and unique Stumptown Park is. With its downtown location, you can eat or shop and then go to an event in the park. And the park literally hosts thousands of people each year with so many wonderful activities. And I'm gonna name just a few of them, but this will not be a complete list. Matthews Alive, Beach Fest, various concerts, including our Charlotte Symphony, our 4th of July celebration, Food Truck Fridays, Positively Matthews, Easter activities, and our Veterans Program, and even yoga in the park. The park, because of all of its events it hosts in its downtown location, is a very unique park, and I believe truly belongs to the total Matthews community. One of the challenges with Stumptown Park is the size of is a little bit over 1 acre. Our town, in conjunction with Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, has had the vision to more than double the footprint of Matthews of Stumptown Park over the next 5 to 10 years. Hopefully it will be over almost 5 acres eventually, and we will redesign the entire park as a result of that. I'm also aware that the town has purchased several houses that were available and plans to purchase additional things to enlarge this. My request for the town commissioner is twofold. Because the park is an integral part of the Matthews community, whenever we decide to rename the park, I would like to see input from the total community, including people who use this park on a regular basis regarding names for the park, in addition to the one currently being proposed. And the second request is, since I'm unaware of any urgency in renaming the park, I would also propose that the renaming coincides with the redesign and enlargement of the park, which optimistically could occur in 5 years. Thank you so very much for giving me an opportunity to speak on something, on a topic that I really love, which is our parks and all of our affairs, all of our events that we offer for our community.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
Okay, our next speaker is Howard Lavender. Mr. Lavender, once the screen shows the 4-minute countdown clock, you can begin. You may begin, Mr. Lavender. You're muted right now.
Got it. Hi. Okay. You got me now?
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm here in a personal capacity, even though I am chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Committee, to talk about the Stumptown Park renaming. It was mentioned by Corey at our last meeting, this might be a future issue, but it was not raised or discussed. So the only input I have is from maybe an email or two from a member of the committee, so I'm not going to go there. I'm a little bit confused as to why this has become an emergency item for action tonight and wasn't like all the other issues we've done with park naming, gone through the process of Park and Rec, doing it, having some public meetings, opening up for public input. In short, I'm not really sure why it has to be decided tonight and why it went to town council without going first through the committee, but obviously you can do that the way you want. Like you, I've been inundated with emails today, at least 25, most of them from Hooks or from vets. Only one came from someone who's not a vet or a vet-related person. All were positive except for one of them. Like Sandy said, we really think that we need to have full community input on renaming Stumptown Park before we go forward. Stumptown really is our only true community park. It's the one that most people, if they have any dealings with our park system, that's the park that they know. They've gone there for concerts, shows, other things. Squirrel Lake's a big park, but it's more of a regional park. Folks like me who live way north of Independence don't tend to go down to Squirrel Lake. So Stumptown Park is a very different animal than the neighborhood parks we've talked about. Now, I'm not opposed to a name change to Stumptown Park, and I'm not opposed to a Veterans Park type of name. All I ask is we slow this process down, allow the full community to provide input before we move forward. One thing that you may want to consider is there are plans to change Stumptown Park substantially in the next 5 years, hopefully. And whether we want to go through this name change now or hold it until we've redone the park and changed the name as part of a grand reopening or rebranding. And that's something my committee would love to have input from you about, how you want us to deal with it. So I just ask we slow this down a bit, go through the normal naming process with some meetings for public input. We may very well end up the same place we are right now, where most people want to do Veterans Memorial Park, and that's great. But there's no harm in slowing the process down and doing things more like they've been done in the past. Thank you, and that's pretty much all I have to say. I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak on this.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you. While we may still have I see we do still have our two speakers on the call, I just want to say that it's certainly was not my intent or the intent of this board to rush this through. There is no great rush, other than the fact that I personally would like to see a memorial name change in the relatively near future, because so many of our veterans are getting on in age. I wouldn't want to put it off for a decade or something. That being said, after speaking and seeing Corey King's email, I even spoke with Hazen about removing this item from our agenda tonight so that we could go back through the Parks and Recs Advisory Committee and have full public discourse. There is no emergency to do this right away. The reason we didn't take it off the agenda is it was already published. So my recommendation when we get to that, which is item 12F, would be to remand this back to the Parks and Recreation Committee. Let you guys do all of your vetting, get full public input, and we can talk about this maybe sometime in the first quarter of next year. But it's certainly something that I personally wouldn't want to drag out for many, many years, because I think it's appropriate to somewhere in our town have a memorial designated. But that being said, that's what I'm going to recommend on item F. I've already spoken to a few commissioners that talked to me about it, but that's what my recommendation was going to be. And I think I feel pretty certain that'll be the consensus of our board, that we remand this back to you, and you guys take your time, get all the public input you can, and then come back to us and make a recommendation. So that's our plan, I think, going forward. So I want to make you aware of that. So there is going to be no vote tonight. There's not going to be any renaming hurriedly done in the dark of night. We do want it fully vetted. So thank you. All right, let's move on to some reports from our advisory committees. The first is the Appearance and Tree Committee, Chair Debbie Foster. Hello, Debbie. You're on mute.
There you go.
Hi, there. Okay, so I had planned on speaking to you all quite a while back, and I thought maybe things would be back to what passes for normal by now, so I kept putting it off, and obviously this is our new normal. I appreciate all of you for having me on. There are a lot of things going on right now with the Appearance and Tree Advisory Committee, and I just wanted to bring you up to speed on some things that we've done and some things that we could potentially do and some plans that we have. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the Legacy Tree Project, and this is not a new project. This is something that we've had around for quite a few years, which we felt has kind of just gone by the wayside. And people can pay to have a tree put in memory of someone. The other part of that puzzle is that they can also nominate a tree in the community. And that's what we'd really like to do with this. We want to have people identify trees on town property and our parks, but also on their own property. And what we're looking for is trees that are unique. So it might be because of the size, the height, the girth, the diameter. It could be because they're a unique species. And I'll give you an example of one of those. The sequoia that's at Seaboard is something that's quite unique to this area. Frankly, it shouldn't be growing here at all, and instead it's absolutely thriving. The oak in front of Matthews Elementary School is another example of that. So what we want to do is we want to start labeling these trees, and we're going to use the stones that they've already been using for the project. They measure about 12 by 16 inches, if I remember correctly, and they will have plaques on them. It will give a Town of Matthews Legacy Tree designation, and it will also mention the botanical name and the common name for the tree. Depending on the space available to us, we may put the measurements at the time the tree was nominated to. We don't want it to be too cluttered to read, so we're working on that. Ralph will go out and certify that the tree is worthy of being a legacy tree, and also that the tree is healthy, because if the tree is diseased and falls down, within 6 months, that's not going to really promote this program. And we're hoping that people will join into this project, that they will nominate trees. They can do this by we'll have brochures in the community center and the library. We'll have something online. We'll ask Maureen to help us promote this project. And our goal is to try to get 5 within the next few months. And we've already identified potentially what those are. As soon as Ralph certifies that they're healthy, then we can move forward with that. And we'd like to keep a list going on the town website so people can say, oh, that's what this is about. I get it. Okay. So moving on to the next thing, we were consultants in the Veterans Memorial landscaping project. And we were very happy to do that. We were very, very happy that they used Lisa Tompkins of It's Elemental Landscape Design and Carolina Heritage Nursery. Every single one of those plants that went in the ground are native plants. So these provide a value to our town. There are pollinator plants there. They provide habitat for wildlife. And this is what we need to be doing in our town rather than planting non-native species. That's why we worked so hard a while back on the plant list for the town. So if you haven't been over there to take a really good look at those plants, go have a look. It's very well done. The mayor was contacted by a resident recently who said, my milkweed is just in full bloom. It's thriving. Why can't we do something as a town with this? And we can do something as a town with this. So what we did is we talked to Lisa Tompkins and said, if we were to have a milkweed for monarchs project, when would be the best time to do it? And you may not know that milkweed has to be cold stratified. So it has to go over the winter in the seed state in order to really start coming on in the spring. So we have asked Lisa to plant 200 milkweeds in 3.5-inch pots, 5 inches deep. And these are all going to be butterfly weed, which is Asclepias tuberosa is the botanical name. And what I'd love some input on is we kind of need to figure out what this is going to look like. We'll be able, with our $1,000 in our budget, to buy 200 of those. And then what we need to know is, are we allowed to sell them or do we have to give them away? And just as a little background, our thought was if we can sell them, even if we don't recoup the entire 1,000, it can fund this to be an annual project. But I don't know what the town regs would say about this. Yeah.
Do you know, Hazel?
Yes, sir. We have done this kind of thing before, and it's really pretty simple. We would just, whatever money was made, so to speak, or we would just put it back into the town coffers, and we would just reappropriate. Let's say it was $1,200. We'd reappropriate it the next year for them to use. I also think there's value in a little skin in the game. That okay, I paid $10 for this milkweed. I really do have to put it in the ground instead of leaving it by my garage or something.
That was our feeling as well. It's nice to get stuff for free, but if you pay for it, you might take better care of it. So we will be doing this in late May or early June. You've got to wait for the plants to come up and look viable. People don't really want to buy a pot full of dirt, even though that dirt will produce sooner or later, but we need to make sure we time this right. So we'll be looking at more specifics later on, but the plugs have been purchased at this point and they are being planted. So stay tuned for that. And then we, from time to time, brainstorm what we can do about the trees in Matthews. And we really were concerned when Trees Charlotte released a public report about the number of trees, the percentage of trees in the canopy in Charlotte, because they got a big shock and they found out that it was less than what they had thought. They knew it was going to be bad, but it was less than what they had thought. So they are well below the 50% rate at this point. So we think we need to be very, very proactive in Matthews. And here are some ideas that we were talking about. Mayor Pro Tem Garner attended one of our meetings recently, and one of the things she mentions was she really wanted to work on saving large trees. And I do think that that's a viable option. The Legacy Tree Project can label these large trees and perhaps give us more ability to protect them. But if we start cutting down all of our large trees, we're going to have a serious problem there. So saving the larger trees, making it convenient for developers to do it. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know if we can offer them something to make it worth their while or to minimize the problems for them, but it's something we need to think about. We do have some magnificent old growth trees here. Annual tree planting goals. Now, Ralph does have this, but Ralph said the problem is he's running out of space. And our parks and the town property just doesn't have the need for a lot of trees right now. So we're going to have to be quite clever and creative with where we're going. And we think maybe the answer to that is developers and also homeowners. So with developers, one of the things that they can do is decrease the use of turf grass in development. And that would actually allow them more space for planting trees. Turf grass is the #1 non-native crop in the United States, and it has zero benefit to wildlife. It's also our greatest consumer of resources such as water and fertilizer. So reducing that and planting more trees is certainly a good step in that direction. We could potentially raise the percentage of tree save in development, and we do understand that there are some politics involved in that, but that is one thing that we thought could potentially help. And if we kept it in small increments, perhaps that would be more palatable to developers. Reconsidering the pay in lieu fees, and this was something that came up over and over again in our discussion. We're at a point, I think, in Matthews where our trees are so precious to us that maybe we don't want to allow somebody to say, I'll just write a check and cut down all those trees. So it's something to think about. Again, we don't make those kind of hard decisions, you guys do, but it's something for consideration. Larger tree islands in shopping centers and business sites. This would be an awesome thing because the trees are going to be more likely to survive if the islands are larger, and it allows us to use larger trees and more trees in the islands. A tree store for residents. You may remember that Trees Charlotte partnered with Matthews last year, and we had a tremendously successful tree store where people actually got trees for free. They could make a donation if they wanted. They got a bag of mulch per tree. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that separately. A tree farm is another potential idea, and a likely possible location for this would be the area at McKee and Pleasant Plains that the Windsor Run people were going to donate to the town. It's a nice wide open site under power lines. So potentially that would be an area that could accommodate quite a few trees that we could also use around the town for landscaping. And finally, I think it's important we recognize that all trees are not created equal. So as developers go about saving trees or around the perimeter or whatever, we need to recognize that our native trees are far more valuable to us than non-native trees are. So we perhaps need to kind of assign a point system to that so that they get more points for saving the native trees than they do saving, God forbid, a Bradford pear, for example. All right, moving on again. You're going to be hearing, I suspect, a lot about a high hill project. High Hill is the name of a town that is adjacent to a street that is adjacent to the Greenway. There is a portion behind it that is adjacent to the stream. And Ralph and his crew have been maintaining this, even though they have to go through a private residence yard in order to get back there and mow it. And Ashley Smith, who was formerly on the Tree and Appearance Advisory Committee and is with Stormwater Services, spoke to us earlier this month. And she said that they are targeting 100 to 150 trees for that site. Anytime you can put 100 to 150 trees on one site just like that, that's something worthy of consideration. We are looking at how we could creatively fund this at this point, and a couple of things we're looking at is the Urban Cost Share Grant with Mecklenburg Soil and Water Conservation District. Stormwater Services could potentially have some money in their budget to fund it, and we could also look at the Mecklenburg Soil and Water Conservation District tree and seedling sale. Now, those are not large trees like we had at the tree store in Matthews. These are what they call seedlings, but they can be as tall as 4 feet. They're very small diameter trees, all native. So that's something. We will have to be clever about how we water, and Ralph and his crew would have to talk to the homeowner about that. So I expect that this is going to be on our plate for a while, but we are working on it. And then there was a project that was sent to us by Leaf, and it's called Tree Yourself. Love the name. And this is an online resource where people can go to a particular address and they can find out, if I only have sun in my yard, what native tree can I plant? If my yard is extremely wet, what native shrub can I plant? If I have shade in my yard, what will live in my yard? And not only will it identify a plant that is good for your particular site, it will also tell you exactly how to plant that, because most people have no earthly idea how to plant. When we worked with the project with the Eagle Scouts at Stumptown Park, all of those guys got a really involved tutorial on how to plant trees, because it was their responsibility to plant those. We just wanted to make sure they did it properly so they lived. Most people plant trees too deep and they die, and people have no idea what happened. So that's something that we can easily do on the town website, perhaps. Ralph is willing to write some articles that we could post there. We can link to things like the North Carolina Native Plant Society, which already has all those resources. And I think it's a great educational project for us, and I think it's beneficial to the population in Matthews. And then the Trees Matthews, we're calling it Trees Matthews instead of Trees Charlotte. I contacted Trees Charlotte again and said, oh, please come back, because that was such a successful thing. It was successful for them too. They raised more money in donations coming to Matthews than they've had in any Trees Charlotte event. So I thought that was amazing. It was so well supported. What they said was, you guys now know how to do that. You should do your own. Okay. Yeah. But the average cost of a tree store that they do is $20,000. Exactly, John. Yeah, $20,000. So yes, we believe trees are really critical and important in the town, but funding would be challenging. Now, we do have a person on the Appearance and Tree Advisory Committee, Devin Rankin, who has experience with grant writing, and she is willing to explore grants that might be possible. She is also willing to chair a fundraising campaign for this. And so our idea is, we don't know anybody in Matthews we can walk up with our hands out and say, can you write a check for 20 grand? But we might know 20 people that would donate $1,000, or we might know 40 that would donate 500, or we might be able to piece it together. And it could be that, depending on how critical the tree canopy is in Matthews, you might consider funding some of that from the town budget, just throwing it out there. The wonderful thing about the trees that they used, they were all native, but they were also 12 to 15 feet tall. These were big trees. So you can plant a 4-foot tree that's about a 1/4 inch in diameter. It's going to take a long time for that tree to show up on the tree canopy. If you put in a 12 to 15 foot tree, that's an inch, inch and a half, maybe 2 inches, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck in terms of the tree canopy there. So it gives us a really good opportunity to make a dent in putting more trees in Matthews, to set an annual goal for how many we want to be able to give away at a sale like this, and then get them in the ground. So good chance to make a difference quickly. And then the last thing on my agenda is the love sculpture behind, it's next door to Seaboard by the railroad tracks, by the public parking. It's a lovely sculpture, and Ralph and his crew put in a very sweet little garden by it. It's behind the bus stop. So here's somebody that took the time to do something of value for the town, and there's a bus stop in front of it. So from an appearance and a value perspective, I think it would make sense perhaps. I'm sure that the transit authority is not going to move the bus stop, but perhaps we might think about moving that sculpture so that it can be better seen and better appreciated somewhere else. Any questions? And I will tell you, I'm running low on battery. So yes, sir, Mr. Miller.
Where is the gumball tree native to?
It's actually native to this area. And believe it or not, I don't like them either. I completely understand, but they are a high value habitat plant because insects get on the gumballs and birds get after the insects. So even though they are, as far as I'm concerned, dangerous in your backyard when you go skiing down the hill because you stepped on them, they are native to this area.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have 10 or 12 of them at my house that somebody can have if they'd like to come get them. Debbie, the $20,000 for the tree store, how much did they, is that net? Did they recoup some of that from people donating?
They recoup some. I don't know what percentage. What they do is they have massive sponsors each year. And the sponsors actually came and worked our tree sale in Matthews. It was so impressive that these people who have such high level positions got out there and they loaded trees and they loaded mulch and they worked right along with the rest of us.
Yeah, I was there that day. It was at Matthews United Methodist Church parking lot, and there were people lined up all the way out to the road.
Yeah, and it was about an hour early that they were lined out to the road.
Lined up. It was a cold day. Everybody was drinking coffee and hot chocolate. It was a fun time, a great event.
Absolutely. And we now have 3 tree masters on the Appearance and Tree Advisory Committee. I just took the training recently. Jill Palmer and Karen Dixon were already tree masters. So we have 3 people that have been educated in the process of going through a tree store. And Tree Charlotte would be willing to act as a consultant for us, but it doesn't really make sense for them to continue to go outside of Charlotte in order to do it when their funding is for Charlotteans.
One other quick comment I've got for you. We had a Eagle Scout approach me looking for projects, and I asked the town board, several people suggested some ideas. And Hazen, you mentioned that an Eagle Scout may be able to help with distribution of the milkweed plants, possibly. So you might want to, I get asked by probably 8 or 10 Eagle Scout candidates per year for projects, and they end up doing things, as I've said to others, that aren't particularly great for the community. If we have a need and let them know, they might be interested in doing it. So I want to reach out to the local scout leaders when that time comes to distribute those. Are there any other questions or comments for Debbie? Commissioner Urban.
I'd like to thank Debbie and her board, especially for resurrecting the Legacy Tree program. We had that a decade ago. We ran into some legislative issues that we aren't able to put any teeth to it, unlike a state tree. And I don't know whether or not we've had any trees in that decade grow to the level of a state tree. That was one item. We did, in the ordinance, increase the island plantings in the parking lots. My recommendation would be, if you want to continue to increase that, you have to look at the carrot stick opportunities here. When we first envisioned the island plantings, we looked at they would only occupy a parking space or 2 parking spaces, so it wasn't some odd number. But I think if you could trade off with the developer compact cars for an island planting or some kind of density bonus for planting, I mean, there's got to be that carrot and stick kind of opportunities out there, and I think they would buy onto that.
Mm-hmm.
Debbie, I have a quick question about native grasses. I was visiting somewhere out west in a subdivision. They had native grasses. I thought they were pretty, but they were probably 24 inches tall. Is there any move in North Carolina for native grasses? And what does native grass in North Carolina look like?
We have a huge number of native grasses in North Carolina, and one of the recommending factors for native grasses is that they usually form a solid self-contained clump. So they don't run amok like some plants will do. They stay together and they require very little maintenance. A couple of them, I think you need to burn once a year, but that you can easily get around that by using something that doesn't require a prescribed burn. Pink muley grass, we have a little bit in Matthews, and it is blooming right now. It is a gorgeous grass. There, I think Lisa included 2 or 3 native grasses in the Veterans Memorial at Stumptown.
Thank you. Any other questions for Debbie? Well, great. You're doing a fantastic job. I'd like to echo what Commissioner Urban said. Fantastic. Really appreciate everything you're doing. And I would like to revisit with this board how we can make this this tree shop work. It was such a great event last time, and I just sat there smiling, knowing that all of those trees were, relatively larger caliper trees were going to get planted in Matthews, and we need to find out a way to make that happen again for sure, or make it periodic every 18 months or something. We do want to figure out how to make it self-sustaining, but that was a really fantastic event. I got a lot of really positive feedback about it. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Debbie. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you, Deb.
Good night.
Good night. We'll move on to item 9B, receive a report from the Committee on Education, Erin Farrell Harper.
Hello, and thank you for having me today. My name is Erin Farrell Harper, and I've had the pleasure of serving as the chair of the Matthews Committee on Education. So thank you for having me. And I am going to apologize in advance. I've been sitting here quietly and my house has been quiet, and we've walked my dog outside and he's just decided to start barking. So I've adjusted to come a little bit closer, but thank you for spending time with me today. And I am going to go ahead and present. I think Lori's going to help me with it, presenting my presentation to you about our school guide that we've created with our committee.
Erin, if you want to just share your screen, you're welcome to do that.
Perfect. Okay.
Got it.
Perfect. So as I mentioned, the town of Matthews, our Committee on Education I've been humbled to serve as your chair of this committee. And at my school, we have kicked the November off with gratitude. And I just wanted to share one more time how humbled I was to work on this committee and to put together this project that I will highlight with you all, for you all this evening. And I would be remiss if I did not just mention and show you the various committee members that served on the Matthews Committee on Education. And if you notice, we have a variety of backgrounds and diverse professions that were highlighted, which helped us create this project. And a special thank you to Commissioner Miller and also to Becky Hawk, because they helped guide and really push us throughout this process of working on our school metrics guide. So a little bit about what our areas of focus were and the roles that we decided that we were really going to focus from the bylaws of our committee. Our goal with creating a school metrics was to really focus on highlighting the different school options for our town of Matthews residents. And that is anywhere from our outstanding CMS schools to our parochial private charter schools that are in the area. So when we looked at our goals, we really tried to focus on the roles of promoting strong relationships from the different schools in the area, but also increasing the awareness of all of the school options that we have available to us as a town of Matthews. So the goals of our school metrics projects were that we were going to provide parents with options, but also give them a few guiding questions to help them navigate what is the right educational fit for their child. We identified success factors as being able to actually identify schools within an 8-mile radius of downtown Matthews, but also provide a snapshot of those schools that we identified. What is some information that our town of residents parents would want to know? And how could we just give a snapshot of that just to share with our community? So we went into the process, and what we did was Becky helped us with identifying schools, and we decided that within an 8-mile radius was reasonable for our families within the town of Matthews to commute to if needed. We also said that if we were to continue with a project like this, we would have a phase 2 of the project, which would be schools that maybe go outside of the 8-mile radius, so that we can continue to just provide snapshots of the various school opportunities for our Matthews residents. So we identified the schools, we created questions that we thought parents would want to know. And I'm going to go back again to highlighting the diverse backgrounds and professions of our committee members. We not only have teachers, we have administrators, we have dietitians, we have just a variety. So we were really thinking about the whole child and the whole young adult as we identified these questions. And then we also leveraged the North Carolina report cards for schools provided by the Department of Public Instruction. Next, we went through the process of collecting the data, and what we wanted to make sure is that we had a personalized touch with all of the schools that we were reaching out to. Also, we leveraged CMS in our partnership with them, and they helped us collect data for all of their schools in the Matthews area, which was incredibly helpful. After we received all of the data, we compiled our data within the spreadsheet. We cleaned up their spreadsheet, and we finally got to a point almost 2 years later where we've been able to publish our school guide. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the school guide that is now living on the Town of Matthews website so that our residents may have it. And I'm hoping that you can see it okay. Let me make sure I scroll up. So what you'll see is it highlights what the guide offers for families, but also it gives numerous options for families to access the file. What we also included within this was guiding questions of how to look for the right school, or how to maybe confirm that the school you're currently attending is right for you. What are some guiding questions that you could ask your family and ask yourself? I want to be really clear that this snapshot is very neutral, and it's just sharing the data. It's not biased in any which way. Again, it's just listing and providing a snapshot of all of the schools that are available within this 8-mile radius to our Town of Matthews residents. So I'm just going to highlight it, but I'm sure you will peruse at your own convenience. But within the spreadsheet, you'll see the school name, but also the website so that parents may access it. The principal name, if it is a school, we ask about the tuition or if financial aid is available, if it is. Some of the schools we were able to include the start time, the end time, and just different highlights so that they understood the snapshot of the school. But again, they're also able to visit the school website in order to really navigate and to learn more about it. That is my presentation, and I'm open to any questions that you may have.
First of all, Aaron, I want to say thank you very much. I was receiving periodic updates on this project from Commissioner Miller, and I know you guys spend an incredible amount of time and effort to make this guide available. So thank you, and please pass along thanks from the board to the entire committee. Are there any questions or comments for Aaron?
Great job, Aaron. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. It has been a humbling experience, as I said, and my family, we are grateful for you. We moved to Matthews because we fell in love with the town itself, and we are raising our family here, and we have enjoyed every ounce of it. I'm originally from Maryland, as you can see, but Matthews has become our new home. So thank you for everything that you do, and it's been my pleasure to continue serving on the Matthews Committee on Education.
Thank you.
Again, thank you so much. I saw a lot of the commissioners give a thumbs up, so we
Okay,
did all again. So very much appreciated.
thank you.
If there are no questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Okay.
That's the consent agenda. I would
I'll make a
make a
motion.
motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to approve this consent agenda A through D2.
We have a
I'll
second. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Whitley and a second by Commissioner McCool. The record show that we're an hour and a half into our meeting before we took our first vote. That's pretty cool. But okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Start with Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
and Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to unfinished business. Item 11A, discuss Town Hall cupola lighting. CJ O'Neill. Hello, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you guys hear me okay? My internet is not great.
That's good.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
great, great. So thanks, Jay, for running this for me. So you and the board had discussed lighting of Town Hall and the cupola at the planning conference. And I wasn't present during those conversations. And from my understanding, you really didn't reach a consensus of what was wanted. Just you knew that you want some sort of lighting at Town Hall. So what I brought to you are three options that we may look at. I don't have great cost estimates yet because I want to find out really what the board wanted before pursuing those. But they're, and I'll apologize upfront for my Photoshop skills, are not great. So one option is the next slide, which is where you can have interior lighting of the cupola. Jay, if you can, there you go. So I did green. But this is where you'd have an interior lighting of the cupola using LED lights on the inside. You would be able to change them for different colors for different reasons. This is fairly inexpensive, fairly easy to do, probably less than $10,000. The next option would be the next slide, which is not a very good rendering of this, but it's uplighting of the cupola. This would be a bit more expensive. You're probably looking in the $15,000 to $30,000 range. And what concerns me about this is that there would be some holes in the roof to put the uplighting in, which is something that we really, I personally don't want just because of the long-term implications. Yeah. Another option is the most expensive, but is probably the nicest. It's uplighting of the whole structure. And obviously this is in Town Hall, but my Photoshop skills weren't good enough to show you what it might look like at Town Hall. But this is where you have different rendition or different lightings that you could do basically the whole structure. And you can have like the classic one on the last picture where you have the traditional uplighting, or you could change it to this one for the different colors, and you can have them all the same color or different colors. But this is much more expensive. You're probably looking between $50,000 and $100,000 to be able to do something like this at Town Hall, depending on how far you wanted to go. So anyway, I just want to open this up for discussion to get an idea what the board may want to pursue, and I'll start talking to different consultants and getting cost estimates once I get a better idea of what's wanted.
CJ, I've got a question before we go to the lighting. It's a tangential question, but have we addressed some of the issues that Commissioner Urban brought up last time about whether it was vented? John, do you want to comment on that? You had some good comments, I think.
Well, I went back through the existing drawings of the building and I didn't see any information that could convey to me to the pro or con of what was going on with the cupola. Cupolas are designed to vent. They're nothing but vents. And there's very little air movement through that. It's probably causing condensation and issues like that. You got a copper ceiling in there as well, copper dome, which is creating some problems. So I guess in looking at the recommendations of insulating it up there, it's probably the best thing you can do at this point in time, unless you really want to dive bigger into the more forensics of what's going on with the cupola. But I couldn't tell anything from the drawings what they were trying to do. So I think CJ and Albert proceeded the original course of action at this stage in the game.
Okay. Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. CJ, I agree with the exterior lighting on the roof. You want to avoid a whole, it's like putting a satellite dish, on your roof, and they've got to drill through it, and hopefully it'll caulk well, and how long will it last, etc., before it starts to leak. So I am in favor of the LED lighting on the interior. It's easy to change. It could probably be done remotely, etc. Just make sure there's a Panther teal blue in there as one of the options.
I agree with that.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Also, Mr. Mayor, CJ, I heard John was talking about venting. Is there any way, and I like what Jeff said too, I like the second one on the inside, but is there any way to get up in there and still, even at this point, maybe create some vent underneath that copper? Just, it don't have to be all the way around, but enough like to have a way to breathe out, maybe on 2 or 3 sides, but I still like the different colors.
Agree.
So yes, they actually have not been up there to finish that, but when they are going up there, they will assess it at that time and figure out the best way of making those repairs.
How do you get up there?
So you can access it from the attic, but they also, for doing those repairs, they'll be putting scaffolding up and tying off all the way around it to be able to work on it from the outside.
We're gonna hire Spider-Man.
Is there a staircase that you can pour down to get up in there or not? I don't know.
I don't either. I haven't been up there. I think there's an access ladder and a hatch that goes up there from what Albert said, but I haven't been up there either.
I went up there years ago. You just hand over fist climbing up a vertical ladder.
Oh, okay.
I tend to agree with everything that's been said so far. I like the least expensive LED option. I mean, the full up lighting on the outside would be really nice, but I think that's a little extravagant right now. So I would support the LED inside. Do we need to take a vote on this?
Can I say one thing?
Sure, Commissioner Bland.
I just wanted to say, I think I think I'm on the same page about, so I just want to be sure. I didn't really like the colored lights as much, but I did really think it was pretty with the natural sort of yellowish, not yellow, but sort of natural lighting sort of thing. I thought that was the most attractive, but I mean, I think for special events, maybe you could do like colored lightings or something, but I think that's the cheapest, isn't it? And the easiest way to go, simplest. Maybe I didn't understand, but I thought that's what it said.
Yes to all those.
Okay.
And it won't be Kermit Green every day.
Kermit Green, okay.
LED is programmable, and so he can make it any color he wants depending on the system he gets.
Sounds good.
I think that's the way to go. Charlie, do we need to take a vote, or can we just advise?
I think he was just simply looking for direction. You'll have a vote on, I guess, on the final cost and construction aspects of it.
Okay. Does anybody else want to weigh in? Anybody else have a different opinion? All right. Well, CJ, sounds like the consensus is LED. Interior.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Move on to the next item. Receive an update on code enforcement issues on Morningwood neighborhood. Mr. McCoy.
Carlo, you're currently muted.
There, we can see you now. How's it going,
Hey,
Carlo?
everyone. How y'all doing?
Good.
I'm come here tonight to present an update on the Morning Eastwood Forest. It's the Eastwood Forest community. Probably in June, we had someone that had in the June Board of Commissioners meeting that had sort of forced a complaint about what was going on there. And then in our July the 13th meeting, I sort of presented a proposal or presented some information to you. Now I want to come back and update that information to you. At the time we went, that I presented to you, we had about 11 properties that I thought showed a lot of trash all around it. And so we were looking at sort of upgrading or doing some things to the community, but there were 11 properties that were a lot of trash around it. Then on top of that, there were about 4 properties that had junk vehicles that we needed to look at. We had zoning issues with about 4 properties. And as I was going through, and I was going out in the community practically every week, riding through, but what I noticed that I thought took away from the community more than anything, because a lot of those, the trash that was at the 11 properties were somewhere in the back, some was in the back in the yard. I started to notice that there was a lot of trash left at the curb. And as I was working through those other issues that we had talked about, I started to put a lot of focus on those properties that had trash up front. And when I started to count, there was 15 properties that literally have trash out there. And what I did was I would go out and see if any was moved, and then go out the next week and it was still there. So I started to put a lot more focus on those properties, because I thought if we cleaned up the curb, it would be better, or at least we would get a bigger bang for our buck. I was continuing to clean up those other properties, but I wanted to also get the trash moved from the curb. So I continued to do that. And now if I look at the current status as to where we are now, the 11 properties that had trash in the rear, side yards, et cetera, it's down to 2 properties. You look at again, I was focusing on the trash at the curb, et cetera. There were 15 of those. We sort of got all of those cleaned up, but I'm telling you, it seems like every time you go by there and if one house gets the trash moved, another one put it back out at the curb. So it's an ongoing problem, but right now there's only 4 when I went out there last week. When I go out there this week, it could be 6, but I'm still continuing to work with them. Junk vehicles, we sort of there were 4 properties. I think we got all of them moved except one. Then an additional one was brought to my attention. So we got about 2 that we needed to do. And I'm going to show you a few pictures a little bit later. Zoning issues are a little bit tougher, but we did get at least 2 of those taken care of. And we're still working on 2 others. Now, if you look at, when you want to get a status, Jay, can you present push those pictures up so we can sort of look at it?
Sure thing. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this particular property, look at the one at the bottom. That's what we were looking at when I first went out there. And I'm not doing this to shame any residents, but it shows you how we went out and started working with the residents to get things sort of cleaned up. That is that same piece of property. As you look at the top, one was taken on 1023. You can see where they moved the junk cars, et cetera, on that. And this was really a pretty good story here, because we actually got a homeless guy that did not have a place to stay, that was actually occupying or helping the resident. He gave me the story on the resident. The resident had 1 broken leg, and then he ended up breaking 2, so he couldn't do a whole lot. So he gave me a sort of a backstory on what was going on. And he said he would get with the homeowner, and then the homeowner got with the family. And so they sort of start cleaning up this house, something I've been really trying to do for quite a while. And Jay, show another picture, please. Now, this one right here, been working with forever on it. And as a matter of fact, again, I want to thank the police officers, Officer Sergeant Cohen and Officer Bram, and other members of Clark's team that have come out with me and worked with me. I actually showed them, they came out later and saw the bottom picture, and they said, well, oh man, that doesn't look good. But I said, guys, you ought to see what was there before, which was that top picture there. So they have worked to get to where they are right now. So the bottom picture show where they are, and they still got a lot of work to do. I think the residents there is still working. We're going to go back out there tomorrow and see what's going on. So I think hopefully it'll be a little bit better here. Show the next picture, Jay. Now this one right here, if you look at the bottom one, you couldn't see the back of that house. But now that's just the cleanup that has happened if you look at the very top one. So at least you can see the ground at this point in time. So I just wanted to show you the pictures, not to shame anyone, just to let people know that these residents are working. It takes time. It was a lot of stuff that was out there and a lot of things to do. It just didn't happen. And a year ago, this has been going on for 10, 15, 20 years. It's been there for quite a while. And what I think, and the thing that I'm sort of pleased with right now, when you look at the enforcement on it, with that enforcement, I usually get notices. I gave them official notices of violation. We met with them, the police officers and I met with them. If there was something on the street, the police will leave a tag, hey, you need to move it. It was an abandoned vehicle, so they end up moving it that way. But as of this point, we've not had to issue any civil penalties. We've not had to do any towing of vehicles here. So it's been a sort of nice way of doing things at this point in time. And we're going to continue to try to work with them, especially with the holidays coming up. One thing before I noticed that Mr. Withrow was the one who did the original, one of the residents, I actually called him and say, let's come out and look at what's going on. And he wasn't able to do it. He was hiking out west somewhere, and he said he'll be back in a couple of months. I just told him to call me if he when he gets back in town. So we hope that happens there, so we can go back through that. But what I'm still thinking we probably need to do is sort of do something very soft, and that softness may be something like have a dumpster that comes out or something like that. Let's do that first before we do anything really tough on that. Get a dumpster, put it on if we can find an empty lot, do that. And that's before we start, doing anything like the town coming in and doing something, because that is a possibility. If it's not cleaned up by the owner, we will clean it up. I'm very pleased with the landlords. The landlords have been working with me too. Communication is key. Once we start communicating with them, then we know that they will start to work with me if I'm talking to them, as long as we're communicating there. So I really think that something like a neighborhood cleanup day as a possible solution would probably work, at least get us in the right path, talking to them. I want to keep away from putting something out there during the holidays, because I really don't want a bunch of Christmas leftovers to be thrown in there, something like that. And I really don't want to do a lot of enforcement during the holidays. I want to let people enjoy their holidays. I still will be going out there talking to them, but I don't want to do a lot of enforcement at this point in time. And we're going to continue to do junk vehicles if we see them and other type stuff. So we're going to continue with enforcement. Hopefully, and hoping that you have noticed that it's a lot better than it was, but we still got some work to go. And that's my report. Are there any questions?
Thank you so very much for paying attention to that area. And I'm going to drive by to view the improvements, but we really appreciate it. I really appreciate it as well.
Mr. Urban?
Carlo, we have a couple of our little pet peeve areas that we've discussed before, but how do we get ahead of this? How do we get a little bit more proactive? Because obviously this was turning a blind eye for 10, 15, maybe even 20 years and letting this happen. And for example, I know along Sam Newell Road, 2348 Sam Newell, that residence put up a fence last year sometime. And ever since then, I continually see something new show up that you can see over the fence, a food truck, a second food truck, a boat, something else. I mean, how do we get ahead of this or proactively sort of monitor the situation where we turn around and 2 years later, it's just filled with all sorts of stuff. And maybe we need a refresher course as to what flies and what doesn't fly, what are the things we need to be doing. But it just seemed to me that you're doing an excellent job in this particular instance, but how can we get out in front of these kind of problems in the future?
John, that's a very good question. But I think one of the first things to do is things like what you're doing now. Bring attention to it. So let me try to get involved in 2348 Sam Newell. Let me go by, see if there's any violation. This is not the only place that we've had junk. People think Eastwood Forest. Yeah. I've been on Courtney. I've been on Williams Road. I've had this situation happens almost all in it. May be 1 or 2 homes in these particular neighborhoods, but this type of stuff happened in other neighborhoods, and I've been in those neighborhoods. So yeah, just bring it attention to me and let me look at it. And Jay and I we'll come up with a game plan and start working on it once they bring it to my attention.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
My question, the things that were along the curb that you said trash keeps appearing along the curb, what sort of items are those, and why are they sitting there? Is it because they're not correctly disposed of, or is it some large item pickups that aren't getting picked up?
Good question. I didn't mention what I mean. If I just saw a couch or something, it's not a big deal. But sometimes I see entire houses. It's a very transit community. Sometimes they do the entire house and they just leave it out at the curb. Or a lot of times their carpet is out there, and Republic is not going to pick that up. So I got to work with the homeowner to get those types of things there. I mean, if it's just a couch, I can say, hey guys, just call and bulk pick up and they'll get it. But they're not going to pick up when you throw carpet and everything out there, like some of the stuff we were seeing out there with those 15 houses.
Well, I think, looking ahead and for other issues, it becomes prohibitive to take your trash to the dump when you're paying a dumping fee. And if you're living on unemployment right now, it's, $300 a week of unemployment. If you spend 10% of that on dumping fees, that's a big deal. It's either take your trash to the dump or it's eat your meals or keep your lights on. So I think that's something we as a council have to be aware of too, is that it's not people who are intentionally, and sometimes it is intentional and sometimes there are other reasons, but as we discuss these homes, it's not necessarily just a living choice, but maybe circumstances as well.
And Commissioner Gardner, that's why I've been very reluctant to go in with a heavy hand. We've had COVID since February, and individuals that are mostly going to be adversely impacted, it's going to be in, let's face it, in that type of neighborhood. So I don't want to go in and say, hey, if you don't do it, I'm going to start giving you $500 fines or anything. That's not the way to work it. You just got to continue to work with them until they can do something, make an improvement.
Yes, so I appreciate your approach on that. I think that works well in any sort of neighborhood where people are making choices of what they can and can't do with their money right now.
Carlo, I drive through that neighborhood. I'm sorry, go ahead, Hazen.
Sorry, I'd like to make a quick comment. As a manager, the 2 jobs that can be the most frustrating is a code enforcement officer that's too heavy-handed and animal control that's too heavy-handed. And Carlo has the ability to kind of mix that thoughtfulness, considerateness, caring, but also enforcing the code. And so it's a nice mix, and it's a skill that not everybody has. We are lucky to have Carlo and his ability to do that.
Well, Hazen, you stole my thunder. I was going to say something very similar. I've Carlo heard from more than one of our constituents that have commented that Carlo, he made me clean it up, but he's a really nice guy and he worked with me. So I think you do have that right mix of being tough but working with folks. And I do drive through that neighborhood about once a week, and I have noticed a substantial amount of cleaning. More to be done for sure, but it's much, much better than it was 3 or 4 months ago. The other comment I want to make for everybody on the board is I've mentioned to Hazen that road, which is an NCDOT road, has some holes in it that would break the axle on my truck. I mean, there are some 1 foot deep potholes. And Hazen, do you want to maybe give an update? You have talked to DOT, or you sent something to Brett tonight, correct? You're on mute. I think that's the worst road we have in our town. I haven't seen one in worse shape.
So I drove out there Friday, I don't know when I drove out there, Thursday or Friday, and it's in bad shape. And I sent an email to Brett, and he said something like he would have their guys, use a very tactful response, right? But in my mind, they're going to fill the potholes, but the road really needs to be resurfaced. It's a DOT road. Jay Camp's the one that said to me, it's a neighborhood street, which is a low priority for DOT, but Morningwood functions as a collector road, right? Because that's how you get from Pleasant Plains down to East Trade. So we need more than just the typical, in my opinion, we need more than just the typical fill the pothole and go on. But, DOT's struggling, but I still think we should continue to put pressure on and get more than just filling the potholes.
Well, again, I don't know of a road in worse shape than Matthews. I mean, there are dirt roads. Dirt roads in better shape.
And I like to make a comment on that. When I'm out there, and we do walk around and talk to them, they are really complaining. They feel like they're left out because
I don't blame them.
I'm riding in my truck, and it's just like, it's like mountains. So you just up and down, and it doesn't make sense, in there. But think about the residents there. We really need to think about at least doing something to the road if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. There's humongous potholes at either end of that road, and then several through the length of it that are, again, I'm not exaggerating. A couple of them are probably over a foot deep.
I'll reach out to Rachel Hunt. I mean, it does feel like economic discrimination, right?
Yeah.
Poor people out there, they don't complain. Nobody does anything about it. So I'll forward an email to Representative Hunt about this.
Okay, thank you.
Pro Tem Carter, do you have another comment about the cleanup or?
It was probably a tasteless joke, but I was going to tell CJ to stop spraying graffiti on their property out there.
Yeah.
CJ rules or something like that is said on the side. Thank you very much.
I think Rachel Hunt is still on as an attendee. I'm not sure if she's listening right now, but she shows as an attendee.
I think she asked us to follow up, so I think with concerns, I think that's certainly one we'll all agree that needs to be addressed. It's getting beyond the point of being ridiculous out there. It's really terrible shape. Thank you, Carlo. Appreciate all you do, and maybe give us another update in a few months, see how that's going out there.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Sir. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We'll move on to item 11D, discuss revisions to tourism fund grant application criteria. Mr. King, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, Town Board. The tourism grant program is one where the town makes dollars available to nonprofits to support tourism and visitation in Matthews. Currently, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, or a subset of the committee, initially looks at and reviews the applications, provides a numeric score based on the criteria shown here: effectiveness, viability, and innovation. That subcommittee then returns to the larger committee. They reach consensus on award amounts and such. And then, of course, we then present that information to the board. Mayor Pro Tem Garner reached out and suggested that diversity of the board or the directors boards of these nonprofits be added as a criteria to evaluate and score the applicants. And I guess this is a discussion about that. If the board as a whole feels that we should go in that direction, certainly one that staff can make happen. I would like to ask get some of the techniques of how you effectively, measure diversity and, define it, just to make sure all the applicants, have a good understanding of it, and we can, certainly share that with them. So I guess essentially this is the conversation about it.
Would you like for me to clarify what I was? I will. So the boards that I sit on, several of them, diversity is a big discussion, not just on the board. Are we, as a board entity, diverse and covering all sorts of different aspects of the community, from economics to race to ability. Does our umbrella cover that? And then also, as a reflection of the voices on the board, are we reaching out to the community? And so that could be also including veterans, or just making sure there's a diverse decision-making group and reaching a diverse audience. And I have an email that I can send you with links to organizations and how they gauge that. I don't know what the legality even is of asking or requiring diversity as a question as far as race, gender, or sexuality, but it could be more of an essay question or something on your application to give the nonprofits the opportunity to share who they reach and what they're doing to reach a more diverse audience.
Gotcha.
Does that clarify, or did I?
No, it does. It makes a lot of sense. As I thought about it, how it could look. What you mentioned in the essay, maybe asking the boards or the applicants to explain or walk me through how your board is diverse, and just whatever the measures say they define as diversity, and then the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee can then just sort of interpret that info like they do the other info on the application.
Yeah, and there have been, studies have shown, and this is why part of it is a big discussion in nonprofits. It's hard to raise funds, but that by becoming engaged in that conversation, nonprofits that concentrate or are working on improving their diversity gravitate towards looking for grants that include that in the process. So it may not expand who you receive applications from, but I guess in my mind, there's no harm in asking.
Yeah.
I've got a question for either Corey or Mayor Pro Tem Garner. What do you foresee, at what percentage of the application would this, is this 5 points out of 100 or 25? I mean, how heavily would this be weighted? And the reason I ask is I can foresee that there may be some groups that for whatever reason aren't very diverse. They may be all one gender or all one race, whatever, and maybe that's suitable for some of them, possibly, I don't know, but how would you weight this criteria?
I think we negotiate a weight for it. At this point, each of these three criteria have equal weight. Essentially, we go to the number 5. So each of them has the potential to score 5 points on each of these criteria. It'd be playing around with it, maybe seeing how some other boards manage it. A little bit of research to figure it out.
I'm certainly not averse to asking the question. Mayor Pro Tem Garner, do you want to?
At the same time, if you have a relatively homogenous group, bringing up the question on the application gets the group to just start discussing what their representation is, and it may or may not apply to the group. I think a Girl Scout troop is going to be fairly homogenous, right? And so
what I was thinking of is, say you had it's probably a poor example, but if you had a group of Native Indians that had a club or a nonprofit that was mostly Native Indians, they may not be very diverse by the nature of what the purpose of their club is. So I wouldn't want to penalize a group like that because they weren't more diverse.
But if you have several groups that are competing for the same funds, and you see a group that is working harder to reach a broader audience, then maybe there would be some benefit to that over another group that is less inclined to do that.
Fair enough. Are there other comments, or Commissioner Urban?
I tend to echo some of your concerns, Mayor Higdon. I mean, this is a tourism grant. It's about bringing impact to the town, and maybe through diversification that helps, but it seems that these are sort of very neutral, unbiased levels of criteria. I mean, you're saying, what's your level of impact to Matthews? What's your attendance? What are you doing with partnership with local merchants? Your financial advice. I mean, sort of very economic development things. And I'm a little concerned that we're trying to tell business owners, you know, where they need to go to sort of get brownie points in some respects. I think your point about, you know, a Native American group, or for example, we have a strong Indian population here that runs hospitality. I mean, I say vet it. Let's see what Corey comes back with. But I have a tough time with Big Brother sort of introducing some things when we're really just sort of focused on tourism grants and economic viability in a town. So there may be some avenues for this, but I do sort of fall in line with you with some reservation.
Yeah, maybe we can see what other towns are doing in this vein. Corey, if you can bring us back some ideas, certainly. Thanks again. I'd like to take a look at them for sure.
I think there's always an economic benefit to having a diverse community and representing, representing all members of the community.
Well, but isn't that the right of the capitalist market for the individuals to decide how they want to do that? I mean, as opposed to being told how to do that. And so ones that are diverse.
Nobody's telling, we're just asking, and we're spending tax dollars to support these companies. So it really comes down to what does our town support as a government function?
You're not, but you're saying it's one thing to ask, but if you're starting to put a point criteria to it, that lends itself to a different level of conversation. Right? I mean,
it's still government dollars. It's not, we're not spending private companies' dollars.
Okay. I understand that, but the town is telling nonprofits, you will do as I say, not as we do, so to speak. And we're going to give more weighting to people who are more diverse, even though there may be some groups that do excellent work, to the mayor's point, may not have a diverse board. That can happen. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
I don't think anybody's telling anybody how to spend their dollars. There are plenty of opportunities for grants in the community.
There are grants in the community. So you're saying though, but our grant, if you're not diverse, the likelihood of you getting funding is less in that situation.
No, I think that I'm thinking from the opposite, is that if we include a show of interest, then in promoting organizations that may not want to come to Matthews because Matthews has a high percentage of white population, maybe they'll see instead that we have a greater sense of welcoming and would try to apply for a grant.
You know, I think that's another conversation. That's sort of falling in the EDAC conversation about what does a town want to attract and how do you attract it? How do you go about doing that? But okay, all right. Well, I see we're moving and sort of vetting this further.
And Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Whitley, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, anytime that you can add diverse, because what I found out in times past, if you don't talk about diversity, so many times these groups will continue to not to look at the whole picture. And I agree with what Renee is saying. Not so much you're not forcing nobody, but you know, I go back to when I first came on the town of Matthews. Matthews didn't recognize Martin Luther King, and it wasn't that they didn't want to, but as it was, nobody never asked them to do that. So anytime you have a diverse group, it's always better, especially at where we are now, because we've seen what the makeup is in particular groups. But anytime money is given out, certainly you got to make sure that you're reaching all the masses in that makeup. And that's just giving an extra point, saying if your group is a diverse, I don't see no problem with that. Then they make that group. So we look around. We don't have a diverse group. I had an organization contacted me the other day because they didn't have no people of color in their organization. And the president clearly said, listen, I want some people in this group that don't look like me, which was a white man. I understand that, but I commend them too for knowing that they look around, and at the time where we're living in now, I think we all in any organization should look at being diverse. Now, I say this, not just one person of color, because that's a token. When you want to get completely diverse, then you have more than one, because so many times still in 2020, we still have people on board, just only one person of color on that board. So I concur. I see what Renee is asking, and I think if it's always there and everyone in mind that we're living in a different time now, and diversity is key on everything. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Can I interject something?
Absolutely.
We're talking about tourism funds, and the statute is really clear on how we may make those grants. It has to be tourism related programs or specific venues. It's not just giving money to nonprofits. It's to increase hospitality in your community. And so we've got to be real careful that we don't get away from the expenditure of tourism funds that doesn't comply with what the statute says we may make those grants for.
Understood. I think my only point was there may be some exceptions where a particular nonprofit is not as diverse as maybe we would want them to be, and I just don't know how you would handle that. But anyway, Corey, if you big order, but if you could find out how some other communities are doing this, and maybe give us some examples, some practical examples, I think we're all willing to take a look at it. As a practical matter, of course, diversity is good. I just want to, when you get down to the, what word am I looking for? What analogy, when you get down to the brass tacks, how does it really work? I would just like to see that, and I think everybody else would as well. Okay. Any other comments for Corey or questions? Or Corey, do you have something to finalize there?
I was just going to add, I'm sure that we'll find that each group is going to define diversity, in their own way. So it is, it'll be a good exercise on my part.
Okay.
Back some good examples.
All right. Thank you, Corey. We'll move on, if there's no other comments on that one, to 11D. Consider purchase of real property located at 925 Matthews School Road. Mr. Blodgett.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. We have talked about this property, and I talked to Miss Lawrence, had a good conversation with her. She really actually spoke to Carla first. She reached out to Carla because she knew we were interested, and she said she'd be willing to sell the property for $100,000. Tax values somewhere around 87. When I sat down and talked to her, she was very concerned about property taxes, and I think she had about 3 years due. And so while the board authorized me to go up to $100,000, in listening to her, it seemed to me that she was very concerned about property taxes. So I did take it upon myself, obviously the board's got to approve this, to the option to purchase, to increase that to $102,500. However, Commissioner Miller mentioned to me and sent me a link that currently the taxes due are over that. Not much, I think $50, if I'm right, Commissioner Miller. But Mr. Buckley also pointed out to me every month those numbers go up. So, I guess I would say if we could keep it at $102,500, or if somebody wants to say, well, let's go to $102,700, my guess is that would cover her. And Jay, if you'll scroll down, I just want to make sure everybody understands the map. I'm sure they do, just because we've talked about it before. But you can see the property that we already have right there. And that's road right away. And then Jay keeps, there you go. That's the Macaulay property. We purchased that, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 5-7 years ago, from Miss Macaulay. So you can see how we've slowly and methodically acquired the property, or the right of way, to build this road. Now this section of Greylock may not be built for 5 or 10 years. And obviously on the other end of this greenway up into the Brigman property close to the Sportsplex, when all that gets built, right? When a developer builds that, we'll expect the right of way to be donated and possibly the road right down there to be built. But so the recommendation is to exercise, the board approve this option to purchase, and I would probably recommend doing $102,700.
Okay, are there any questions, comments, or motions?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to
Sir.
make a motion that we approve the managers to go up to $127. Is that right? Am I saying it right?
102,700.
Yeah, that's correct. For the purchase, they'll take care of the additional tax. I can't tell this board that her sister just died this week. I just had her funeral on Thursday, and I know the family. That's enough said with that. But I'll agree with that, Hazel.
I'll second the motion.
Motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner Miller. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That passes unanimously. Move on to new business. Item 12A, receive the monthly budget report from Becky Hawk.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. We bring to you another month of positive news. So as you saw in the memo, if you had an opportunity to look at it ahead of time, our ad valorem taxes for this year to date is about 20.2% of our budget. This does put us trending a little bit above where we were at this point in time last year. Now, if you do remember, we did scale back some of our projected collection rates, but we are very happy with where we are in how we projected those and how we are sticking to budget with our collection rates at this point. So that also applies to our local sales tax collection rates. We're at 18.9% this month year to date. We were at 17.1% at this time last year. Recreation revenues are down a bit, but that is to be expected considering so many of our events and classes have had to be canceled. So we have also seen some corresponding decreases in our expenditures that offset those decreases in revenues. The tourism tax rate is at 39.2% of budget, which is also ahead of where we were this time last year. We were at 31.6% at this time last year. Beth mentioned last month our investment earnings that we expect them to be pretty negligible for the year at this point. We might clear $5,000 or $6,000 at the rate that we are going for the entire year. We did project about $70,000 in revenue for that line item for the year. So that is one area where we are down. We expect to be down. And that's just because interest rates are basically nothing. But we at the $65,000 difference in that line that we'll be able to make it up elsewhere, whether that's doing a little bit better in some of our other revenue lines or finding some savings on the expenditure side. As far as departmental budgets, there's nothing out of line, no concerns. We're pretty much in line with where we tend to be about this time this year. So, you know, as we've said in prior months, we continue to watch everything closely, and the pandemic is certainly lasting longer than I think any of us hoped that it would. But at the same time, I think that with our conservative projections on our revenues and our conservative budgeting that we went through this past spring, that we are continuing to look to be positively positioned overall for the year at this point so far. And happy to answer any questions.
Becky, what percentage are we getting on our investment?
I would have to look. Those are invested at the state level. So we are very restricted in how those are invested. I would have to look at what the exact percentage is, but I know that it's very, very low. It would be close to zero. So in the past, I think in prior years, we were pulling a couple $100,000 in investment earning revenues. It was a very lucrative line for us that has just completely bottomed out.
So maybe either you or Hazen or Charlie can answer this, but we would be, as a town, forbidden from placing money. I guess I have an ally account. I guess there's a maximum amount you can put in that, but there's online accounts that pay up to 1% that are readily available for individuals. I guess the town has amount.
We are expressly prohibited from being able to invest like that. The LGC manages all of that. And the positive is when we have downturns in the recession, it keeps us very stable. The negative is when we have significant growth, then we don't see those same returns, but we are very restricted. It is all controlled and invested on our behalf per state statute.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Ms. Hawk? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Item 12B, consider private sponsorship of amenities within public spaces. Mr. King, you're up again, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I feel very confident, I guess most times, if I were to ask the board if we should use some alternative source of funding to help, build a dog park. Very confident in most cases it'd be a yes. But there are examples where local governments and leaders decided not to partner with private businesses to bring public amenities into public spaces. There are some local examples. In this case, I'm really talking about our next dog park that we're building. One example is Indian Trail. Their dog park is sponsored by the Indian Trail Veterinary, whatever their name is. But the local vet sponsors their dog park. Essentially, that arrangement is roughly $5,000 to $7,000 per year, I think they shared. Another example on the other end is, say, the Matthews Sportsplex. That was a deliberate decision, conversation. They were not going to associate themselves with any private organizations, especially any athletic organizations, just simply because they wanted it to be very clear that the Sportsplex is open to everybody. Nobody's, co-sponsoring this. This is a county facility. And what I found when I asked around, it pretty much is a case-by-case basis. It's not a hard line. This is going to be our approach. It is most municipalities would look at the space and then make that decision whether they would use private dollars to help, make the project happen or no. And as Hazen and I were talking about this, I guess that's something that we haven't really had the conversation about with this board. And so tonight, just asking, what is your position on private dollars being used in a public space? And in this case, in a dog park where there could be some, sense of permanence. It could be an agility course that's added to the dog park. It would, be in the park for X number of years. And again, just what is your opinion about that?
Well, I will start. I did discuss this, Corey, with Hazen briefly when we were reviewing the agenda, and I do think it's somewhat of a slippery slope. I mean, when I think of a dog park, maybe that'd be all right, but then are we going to have the Coca-Cola town green and the, whatever? I mean, it is a slippery slope. So I think we'd have to be very judicious in allowing it only for a few areas. It does seem that if any public space, a dog park seems like a perfect fit for Petco or something like that to help us build it. I don't know what others think, but I certainly wouldn't want to make it routine that our town is just being sold piece by piece to whoever wants to sponsor. Mr. Bland.
I think the question in my mind sort of turns on if it's something like they want to make a contribution to, but the park or whatever the public is open to everybody regardless, and nobody gets any preferential treatment. It's just the use of like the name, for example, like this is the Petco,
dog run or whatever you want to call it, or, something like that. That's that, but they don't have any control or say so over how or who uses it. It's a public facility that's open to everybody. As long as it's that way, am I reading it right, what you're saying, or is it just a naming sort of thing?
No, not a naming. It would be, in this example, what we're looking at is right now, the budget we have, not very likely we'd have a nice agility course. This would be, say, added value in the park. Whatever group, if we do find a group to partner with, it would be, call it some form of signage on that particular agility course or piece of equipment that will be in there.
But they wouldn't get, they couldn't tell other people you can't go and use that.
No.
Okay. So in other words, they would have their name on that piece of agility equipment, but anybody that has a dog that wants to go out there and run their dog through the dog course or whatever could do it.
Certainly. Yeah. Would not be signing over any authority to any group or company. It would be us, managing the dog park.
Okay.
May I clarify one thing?
Sure.
Look at the plaque at the library. When they opened the library, citizens made donations. If you made a donation over a certain amount, you got your name on that plaque. What I hear Corey saying is it's kind of a donation plaque at the dog park. But you're making a donation. You're not buying advertising space.
Correct.
So what Charlie's saying, it would be like these, like my law firm gave money to the library, and so there's parts of the library that have Weaver Bennett Bland, whatever there, you know what I'm saying? And so that would be the same thing, except it would be the dog, it would be the Weaver Bennett Bland or whoever else the dog people wanted to put on the dog run. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and to the point Charlie just made, I think it would be, call it how we are going to approach this, because the sign would have this company's name on it. So
right.
Like look at it, it could be considered advertising. It's how we want to look at this.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave, we don't want you to come to the library and say, "Get out of my chair, kid."
Well, you can't read that book. That's my book.
But, I do recall in my youth in Charlotte, I grew up near, as many of you have heard, near the aptly named Park Road Park. And they had a Perrier course. You run to this station and you do push-ups, and you run a little bit farther and do pull-ups or whatever. And it was sponsored by Perrier, and they had, the water people, they had a couple signs up, and I guess they paid for it and made it possible to build. So I guess this idea has been around for a long time. Does anybody else want to weigh in? Give Corey, I certainly don't want just Dave and I to give our opinion. Commissioner Urban?
Well, I think I wouldn't want it to be no holds bar across everything. If there's the ability to pick and choose which type of venues have this sponsorship, I think I could be in for that. But to your point, Mr. Mayor, that the slippery slope, and next the whole town is plastered. We look like a stock car. You know what I'm saying? On the track, all over the place. But if we could limit and control these things, I would be comfortable from that standpoint.
Thank you, Commissioner McCool.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I don't want to look like a NASCAR team with just, advertising everywhere. I think in certain places it's good. So I'm in favor of it, so long as we don't go too crazy and start sponsoring everything.
Mr. Miller?
I agree with everything that's said. I think it's appropriate for a small sponsorship or an area of a park.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Garner, do you want to weigh in? Okay. I think the consensus, Corey, is let's go for it if we can pick and choose, and this seems like an appropriate application for this type of money.
So my suggestion would be, Corey, if you want to talk to them, let's bring it back to the board, because everybody may have 7 different opinions and it doesn't look like the expectation. Let's kind of get clear on what it would look like, where would it be, so when it's up and it's too late, the board or the public's not saying what is going on here. So we'll have clear expectations.
like the black pest control sign.
And we don't have a certain partner right now. There are a couple of feelers out, but we will part of the process is putting the package together. So what they feel they get the value for, what we feel is valuable, or say value for what they be for what they would have in the park. So yeah, once we get a better idea of what it really looks like, once we have that partner say on the hook or ready to go, we'll bring it back.
Thank you. While we were discussing this, Larry got cut out of the meeting, so we're trying to get him back in. So I just texted Lori. She's going to work with them. All right. Thank you, Corey. I think you've answered our questions on that item, and we're working to get Commissioner Whitley back in our meeting here. Any other comments for Corey on this? I think
Let me make sure of something. Corey, do we need to approve anything?
All right. Thank you, Corey.
No.
We'll move on to 12C. Consider turning movement at South Trade Street and Stagecoach Lane. CJ.
Thank you, Mayor. Can Reverend Whitley hear this? Because I think there is a vote at the end of this.
He has not been added to the meeting yet, so I don't know if he's able to hear it.
You know what the issue is, Lori?
I have not been able to get in touch with him yet, and I don't see him trying to get on yet. So I don't know what his status is.
He said his screen just kind of went black and he's unable to, I don't know what's going on. Let's see, are there other items that we don't have to vote on? Maybe we can pass this one up. We vote on the next one. D, E, and F. I don't think we need to vote on F or receive information. How about on Dana's consider amendments to Matthew's comprehensive transportation plan? Does that require a vote?
It does, but the receive information on the downtown mobility item after that does not.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about something while we're waiting for him to get on? I was going to ask CJ because it had to do with that zoning at the corner of Weddington Road and stuff like that. It's not particularly that zoning, but I noticed that when I was riding by there that there's a road that looks like it comes into the side of that property out of the subdivision that has its entrance in the city of Charlotte part of. And I was my thought is that a road that actually connects to that piece of property, or it looked like it just dead ended into that piece of property? I was curious about that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I'm going to try to pull it up on Google Maps real quick.
Because it looked like that would be like a separate entrance that could go into that piece of property. And I was just curious why no one ever brought that up or said anything about that. Because traffic was a big concern there.
So I'm not, you're talking about the property at the corner of Weddington Road and South Trade Street?
Yeah, where they were, I think they were asking for apartments and townhomes on that particular piece of property, and concerns were raised by a lot of people up and down that road because of the traffic problems it create.
Yeah, so there is a road called Windlock Drive that goes in that direction, but I think there's quite a distance before you get to the property. I know there's a lot of grade issues going through there as well. Besides, it looks like there's houses built around there. So I'm not sure if that's the road you're speaking of.
Years ago, when I was looking at houses, that very end of that street is in the town of Matthews, but the rest of that road is in the city of Charlotte. Okay, so you'd have to go into the city of Charlotte and you drive down that road, and it looks like it comes right down into that piece of property. That's when I can't point to it, but it looks like there is a road and there's like street sign on it even, because that's what caught my eye as I was driving by.
So none of those roads enter that property that are in Charlotte and go into Matthews. If you go like in the next neighborhood up, there's some Kipperly does that, but that doesn't go into this property. So it's the same
Okay.
general area, but I'm not
Alright.
seeing it.
Maybe I was confused. I
But
didn't want
if
to.
you see it, let us know.
All right,
We'll
I'll
be happy
follow
to
up.
help.
Next time I get there, I'll get out of my car. Go in there.
Okay, Larry is rebooting his computer, so I was going to say let's take a break, but we're nearly finished. So let's go ahead and just wrap this thing up. I know it's getting late for everyone. So can we move on to item 12E, receive information on the downtown mobility and parking study from Dana.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, good evening. I just wanted to bring back to you the downtown parking and mobility study. Just an update. We had direction from the board at its adoption, which happened in July 27, 2020. So in the summer, the town board decided to approve this study. And there were some things that you guys wanted us to tweak on it. And, you know, literally in the document. And so it's taken us a while. The consultants helped, the staff, we did some work as well, just to clean up the document. And that's why I wanted to bring it back sort of full circle, that it's now posted on our town's webpage under adopted plans in the planning department section. And it has most of the things that you all wanted us to clean up. There were some things we just couldn't afford to have the consultants go back and do, as we noted during the our session back in July. So some of the things we did clean up, there was concern about, or there was a specific motion about Renfro's hardware, there being only a pedestrian only section behind Renfro's, as opposed to it was shown as a road. And so that was changed per the request of the board. We also had the consultants go back and change the plan view within the document, showing that all of the parallel parking that was converted from the angle parking converted back to angle parking. So we do have that plan view sheet within the document corrected. And there were, not all the renderings were corrected, but a large majority were corrected. And any remaining renderings that were couldn't be corrected, we did put the note that at the time of adoption, the parallel was recommended, not the diagonal. Oh, I'm sorry, I flipped that. That the diagonal, the reorientation to parallel parking was removed, basically, so that we could have the diagonal that it currently exists remain in the plan document. We changed the front cover because the front cover had a lot of the that type of parking in the front cover, so that was changed. And then verbiage, we basically went through the document and made sure like the recommendations didn't have that reorientation of parking happening in the back of the document where the verbiage was. So it is for the public to see. It's, you know, it's an adopted document. It is with it is posted on the website, and you all, you know, happy to view it, and hopefully we'll, you know, get to implementing some of it, you know, in due course, and we'll obviously bring everything back to you all as we try to ramp up some of the projects.
Okay, any questions for Dana? There's Mr. Whitley. Hello, my brother. Larry disappeared again.
There he is.
Larry, can you hear us? Larry, can you hear us?
Larry, you're on, but you're muted. Can you hear us?
We can't hear him.
He won't be considered an active member unless you can hear him and he can hear you.
Lori, can you ask him to, can he dial in somehow?
Yes, I'll get that message to him.
Okay, any questions for Dana? We really appreciate getting that document cleaned up to a great degree, and I feel much better about putting that in our library with those changes made. And while we've got a second, we're waiting for Larry to come back on. I want to say that Dana takes time every month to help prepare myself and Mayor Pro Tem Garner for the MTC and CRPTO meetings. CRTPO, get that right. And it's greatly appreciated because she gives me little tidbits of things to say, and then I seem like I'm a genius. Everybody's like, wow, that Hayden guy, he's really on the ball. And it's only because Dana is telling me what I need to be aware of. So she always makes sure that we're very well prepared. And in this last meeting, Dana, I don't think I've told you this yet, but you may have heard that we talked about the Graylock Ridge extension and how difficult it was going to be to meet this June of 2024 deadline. And Dana and Susan were telling us that they need every second of every day they can to compress that or extend that schedule. And so Dana suggested that I ask that we take a vote in December instead of waiting till January as traditional. And I suggested that, and they said okay, and so they're going to do it. So it bought us another month of time, and I got a few texts from people in the commission going, "Wow, you're really sharp. Wow, that's a great thing you did for your town." And I'm thinking, Dana did that work down. I just the mouthpiece of saying what she told me to say. So great job, Dana. We really appreciate you a lot. So thanks for that.
I will say that I was told, and we had our POC meeting, the meeting that just sort of decides policy, and they announced that we are going a month early, and they didn't name me by name, but I am glad that happened because we do want to make that project successful.
Well, we got you another month, so. Larry, can you hear us? You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, I can hear y'all now. I don't know what's
all right. Okay. Yeah, that happened to me a few meetings ago. My computer just started acting up, but glad you're back.
What did I miss? Everything.
What did we volunteer Commissioner Whitley for while he was gone? Dana, we don't have anything. Yours was for information only, correct?
Correct. And then CJ has the next item, and then I can go after him, and I do have an action item.
Okay. Let's go back and finish up item 12C. Consider turning movement at South Trade Street, Stagecoach Lane, CJ.
Thank you, Mayor, Board. Jay, if you can just go ahead to the diagram on the last page. That'll be helpful speaking from that. Great, thank you. So when this is the entrance to Fullwood Station, which is off of South Trade Street. And when this was being considered for a rezoning, the neighbors at Hampton Green raised some concerns that this may be their only way of getting to downtown when South Trade Street was widened. That was before Talbot Court was put in, and we weren't sure how well that would function for them. What they had asked the board to consider, and the board did end up passing, was a condition of the rezoning for Fullwood Station to make this left turn, which used to be that U-turn bulb, make this left turn smaller so that large trucks couldn't make that turn. They were afraid that the trucks would get in there and kind of bog up that movement, and they wouldn't have a way of getting back to downtown Matthews. So the board did approve that as a rezoning, and as part of that, the Fullwood Station, when this was designed and developed, they narrowed the U-turn bulb so that only passenger cars could make a U-turn. The kind of unintended consequence of that was that people turning left into the neighborhood, if they followed that median on the right-hand side to the end, then they would be turning into that curb line and almost had to make a U-turn to get into the entrance. Now, this isn't an issue if people turn earlier, but a lot of people don't do that and follow that to the end and then have to make that kind of weird turn. It also is an issue with some of the landscape trucks and things like that turning into the neighborhood. They don't go down to this next signal, which they can do to access the neighborhood. Instead, they turn here, and the sign on the nose of that median, which is colored red, gets knocked over continuously. So a resident of Fullwood Station raised the concern that it's hard to make that movement into the neighborhood, and also that trucks keep knocking down the side, and had asked us to modify it so that to make that turning movement easier. Now, since this was a condition from the board on the rezoning, I don't think that we could move forward without bringing it back to the board to make sure that you were all okay with this. You've already run it by NCDOT, and they are fine with us doing that. And what we're proposing to do is that median where the red is we're going to shorten it up to the end of the red mark. And then so that people don't turn left out of Stagecoach Drive, we'll also extend the other median where that yellow line is a little bit further. So we can do that with our own forces. We're estimating roughly $10,000 to make that change. So really, I'm looking for the pleasure of the board.
You know, when I,
Mayor,
yes, go ahead.
can I jump in?
Sure.
Since this is a condition on a zoning plat, it could only be changed by an amendment to that zoning plat.
So
And
do
that's
we
after the
have
public hearing.
So do we have to bring that back then and have a public hearing?
That's correct. You cannot change zoning amendments without going through the public hearing process.
Okay, then I guess really what I'm looking for then is the direction of the board if they want us to pursue doing that.
I think, yeah, we absolutely should. It's a problem. And, you know, when I went back and investigated this, our former commissioner, John Ross, looked pretty smart. He called this entire issue happening, and I don't think anybody listened to him. I went back and read the notes, and he brought up this exact scenario. Maybe we should have listened to Commissioner Ross a little better back then, but I think it's an issue right now, and we should definitely fix it. And you know, we to some degree caused it, not certainly any intent, but it is a problem. I've been up there. You can see where probably the landscape trucks are continually running over the curb. I think this would help fix the issue. So I'd be in favor of doing whatever we got to do, having a public hearing, et cetera, to amend the zoning amendment. How does anybody else feel? Anybody else have any thoughts on it?
I do. Mayor, if I can go, I have a question for an observation and a question for Charlie. Now, that intersection was going to be a bulb out, like a super street bulb out. And then it was decided that they could connect to Chesney Glen at the stoplight. And so there were a number of moving pieces in this discussion. And then they eliminated the bulb out and stayed with the street alignment. I'm not understanding why we need a public hearing on something like this.
It was approved as a part of a zoning condition on a zoning plat. And we have no right to change that except through the zoning condition amendment process.
How long will that take?
Well, a couple of things you're going to have to do. It's like filing a new application to change the zoning conditions. But secondarily, you're also going to need the owner's consent to the change.
Charlie, before we do that, I'm sorry, I was just thinking about this. We're not really, I don't think, changing what the rezoning said, which was that the U-turn could only be made by passenger cars. All we're doing is making it easier for people to turn left into the subdivision.
What I heard you say, though, was it was a zoning condition. So if we're not changing the condition at all, then it will not require any kind of zoning amendment.
Good.
So I'm sorry, I just picked up on your language, but maybe that's not what's going on here.
Good.
So maybe we could take a vote on this and then we can research it further to make sure that we're not running into any issues
Well,
with the
yeah,
zoning.
correct. Yes. You could treat it as a traffic engineering issue and not a zoning condition issue. But when you said it was a part of a zoning approved plan, then the only way you can change that is through a zoning amendment. But what I hear you saying now is it was not the design of the intersection, but the use of that intersection that was a part of the plan. Meaning it prohibited the turning movements by a certain other, but we can redesign it without doing a change in the zoning condition.
Correct.
Okay. As long as we're not going contrary to the zoning condition, we could do it.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? I'm in favor of it. What do others think?
I'm in favor of it too, Mayor. It just makes sense. It just where the red is, take it out 10 feet. Where the yellow is, put the block there so they can't make a left turn. It's good common sense. And if it's not affecting what Charlie's saying, then I'm in favor of going ahead and let CJ them handle it and get it done.
Yeah, right now the conversation, at least with the person that brought this to our attention and a couple of his neighbors, are we have to have this in this ineffective way because the town board said that's the way it's got to be. So I think we can remedy it. We don't, you're not going to see everything necessarily. Hindsight's 20/20, but we can make this a better turning movement by making these changes, I believe. Do we need a vote?
Yes.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion, Commissioner Miller.
I'll make a motion to approve the modifications as shown on the slide to the entrance of Fullwood Station at Stagecoach Drive to be constructed before the acceptance of the Fullwood Station streets, and to appropriate from the general fund the cost for town crews to make the modifications not to exceed $10,000.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Miller, a second by Commissioner Whitley. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
I vote yes. That passes unanimously. That takes care of the second portion, right? The budget ordinance amendment.
No, Mr. Mayor, please take a vote on that. You can vote on both of them together.
I'm sorry, I thought we just covered the second item in Mr. Miller's motion.
Mine was for the approval of the median.
Charlie, is that acceptable?
Really, you should take, since it's a budget amendment ordinance, it ought to be specifically on that, a vote taken on that ordinance.
And there are two ordinances together. Can they vote on both together?
Well, on the agenda, it just says a budgeted ordinance amendments. You really need to kind of break them down. They need to vote on the ordinances, each one.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion or motions.
I thought we were on turning movement.
This is about the turning movements, the funding for the turning movement.
Yeah, I thought that he rolled it into as the earlier.
That's what I would have thought.
Right. You said appropriate the funds from the general fund, right? Didn't you say that?
I did.
Well, that's not adopting a budget ordinance amendment.
I'll make a motion to amend the budget, to amend the CIP fund to transfer from the general fund to increase by $10,000 to the CIP fund, and to amend the CIP fund with, let me see, to have a $10,000 expenditure from the CIP fund for Fullwood Station improvements.
Second.
Can that be a not to exceed 10,000? You may not spend 10,000, correct, CJ?
Correct. And what we could do is if we don't use all that money, it automatically routes back to the
Okay,
general fund.
do we need
I
that
think.
verbiage in there then? If not. All right, we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Garner, a second by Commissioner Miller. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that passes unanimously. So I think we covered it.
Mayor, can I ask a question of CJ, please?
Absolutely.
It might be a silly question, but it's not intended to be that way. Since the median is the exact same length, couldn't the existing median be cut out and cropped into a cutout of the asphalt?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I have a feeling when we try to take it out, it's going to break up. So it won't all be in one piece. But we can try it. It'd be interesting to try.
It's the same size, same area.
And I need to do the second part of this amendment, right?
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't want
I
to.
thought we covered everything, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There's this second page. I didn't want that to be missed.
Yes, please do.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the budget to amend, let's see, $10,000 from, I maybe don't understand this enough to appropriate not to exceed $10,000 to amend the general fund. Gosh, I'm screwing this up.
Read section 3.
Yeah.
Let's see, but don't I need to include $10,000 in there?
Yes, but you're allocating fund balance for a transfer to the CIP in the amount of 10,000 to fund the Forward Station Street improvements at Stagecoach Drive.
Not to exceed $10,000.
How is that different than the First Amendment?
It's not worded the same.
Scroll up to the First Amendment. So what we're doing is we're taking it from the general fund. We're putting it in, we're transferring from the general fund into the Forward Station improvement. And then down here, it's in the general fund. I'm not going to explain it well either. I'm not sure this is the right order.
It just basically removes the funds from one bucket and puts it into another, but we need two different amendments to do that.
Like one to take it out and one to put it in, or what?
Pretty much, yes.
Is it possible that these two are reversed? One takes it from the general fund and puts it in the CIP. The other transfers from the CIP into the project budget?
I think that's exactly it.
That
Yes.
Now that makes sense.
And it's hard for all of us to look at these things at one page at a time, for me at least. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'll do a better job of writing the memo next time to make it easier.
Mayor,
Okay.
can I ask us? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Forget it. Pretty confusing, isn't it?
So Renee, was your motion what CJ just said? If that's so, I will second that.
My second original motion should precede the original motion. Yes.
All right. Lori, I God bless you if you could transcribe what was just said. We have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Garner, a second by Commissioner Whitley, I believe. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right.
And
Like a roll call vote. So we know what we're doing. We're just moving from general fund to CIP to the project. All right. Commissioner Bland, how do you vote, sir?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And that passes unanimously as well. So thank you very much. A little bit of a struggle to get through, but we got there. All right, we'll go to 12D, consider amendments to Matthews Comprehensive Transportation Plan. Dana.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Once again, it's almost 10 o'clock. So I will go through this. Please ask as many questions as you'd like. So what we are looking to do is the town has a Matthews Comprehensive Transportation Plan. It's a pretty thick document. It was passed in 2014. It was with both the town of Matthews and the town of Stallings. What I'd like to do is have it amended and have two very specific things amended in the document. Basically, we, over the course of the 2 years that I've been here, you've had the John Street Committee, you've requested that staff delay the John Street project, and we've had the sub-area model. In all of those things, you know, we've learned things about our network, and we've learned how things function in a finer grain now. And so two things on the comprehensive transportation plan that perhaps you all would see fit to change is, number one, East John Street. So basically the 4-lane section, North Trade Street to the Union County border, that is currently shown in the CTP as 4 lanes. You know, 4-lane divided is what is being shown. And we are requesting that that be replaced with a 2-lane improvement, so that our CTP is in line with sort of the current thinking right now of, you know, while of creating a smaller footprint for the that section of road for basically from 485 to Trade Street, as well as Weddington Road currently has no improvements shown on it from Pleasant Plains to 485. And that is basically, we want to have improvements on the 2-lane section. So it still would be 2-lane, but we would want to see some improvements happen on the Weddington road section. And that's something that I've been talking with with CDOT, because we do have the jurisdictional boundaries right there. So just making sure that, you know, they're comfortable with, and again, this is our local CTP, our local comprehensive transportation plan. And I think it's something, it's really important that you realize that none of this that we're, you know, that we're talking about tonight will impact the John Street project as NCDOT's project, but it is reflecting, I think, what we've learned over the course of 2 years in our own documentation. If we wanted to, if you all wanted to take action at some point to change the project for NCDOT. So in addition to that, one of the other main reasons I want to have this change is there's something called the MTP, which is the, I'm looking at my notes, Metropolitan Transportation Plan. I know what that is, but not at 10 o'clock at night. And so the MTP, it happens every 4 years, and that's a function of CRTPO. So the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization updates their MTP. And this is the document that has all of the, basically you have to be in the MTP in order to get on the STIP, the State Transportation Improvement Program, right? That's the list that actually gets built. And so one of the things that I, you know, in theory want to sort of test out is if we have a different category of project for the John Street section, could we get funded under a different scenario for a 2-lane improvement section as opposed to a 4-lane improvement section? So again, just things that I'm sort of exploring, sort of again, an academic exercise. So those are sort of the background, the issues, and the proposed solution obviously is the to make a recommendation to amend the our local Matthews Comprehensive Transportation Plan.
Okay, thank you, Dana. Are there any questions or motions?
You can make a motion if you'd like.
I would love that.
I have a question, Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
So Dana, are you suggesting from Trade Street to Graylock stay in 2 lanes?
Right. That is for the local Matthews Comprehensive Transportation Plan. Currently, it's recommending a 4-lane cross section. And so with all the work that we've been doing in the town, I think it's up to the board on whether or not that cross section changes to a 2-lane cross section. And that 2-lane cross section could have upgrades for multi-use path and medians and things like that in the cross section, but it's the capacity, the lane width, that is the question here. How many lanes will be in that cross section?
Well, we put this off for several years, and originally we went from leading down to Greylock to now letting it go all the way out from Greylock all the way out down to Stallings, Indian Trail, and then come back last. And now we want to go back to, I just don't see that'll work. I still think we didn't want a super street, and we were all clear on that. But I still think we need to have a 4-lane. We got 4 lanes coming from the west side to Trade Street, and then still hitting it too. It's not going to improve that road any further. We're talking about 7 years going back and addressing. Me personally, I do not agree with a 2-lane. I think we can modify it to 4 without a medium. But
is Larry frozen? Is Commissioner frozen?
I shot a freezing ray beam at him, apparently. Larry, we can't hear you, sir. Are you back? Can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We heard you. You just froze for a second.
Yeah, I really have opposition because we put this strip off for 7 years. Now we want to go back, just keep it to. I'm not in favor of that. At 7 years now, the traffic is going to be tremendous coming to downtown. I just learned now that the Exxon station is going out of business, not because of this, but at the same time, we're going to have to move that traffic from from Trade Street all the way out to Greylock and continue so that we can have a steady flow. It's not going to change the dynamic, but for just that one section to be 2-lane and everything else is 4-lane it doesn't make sense.
Commissioner Whitley, I want to remind you that we just had a study. What was the name of that? I guess the mobility study that said that it would perform adequately with 2 lanes, considering all the other improvements we were making: Greylock Ridge, Weddington Road interchange, McKee Road extension, etc. That it would be serve our needs as a 2-lane road. And also the group that met when Paul Bailey was mayor came to the consensus that we wanted the section from 45 to Trade Street to be 2 lanes.
So it wouldn't cut the town in half.
Right. We don't want Independence Boulevard to be the New Monroe Road or New John Street.
Well, my background as a state trooper is you move traffic. And when traffic bogs down, and you can do all the mobility study, and I don't have no problem with that. My problem is that if that section from Greylock all the way out to Indian Trail is going to be 4-lane, and just this one section, when clearly you can still do that. I'm not in favor of the super street. I wasn't, but I was in favor of us making it where it looks moving traffic. So that's fine. Now, whatever y'all decide to vote, I'm not in favor of 2-line. I'll just be honest.
Fair enough. Commissioner Urban?
Dana, what we're talking about, though, is the current snapshot in time based on the information we have. I mean, obviously, we know that whatever number project has been deferred, pushed out. So obviously, to Larry's point, if things develop and change as other projects come online, we could come back to the CTP and amend it, obviously, if the data proves otherwise, correct?
Right.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say the analysis we did with the sub-area model was both a land use and a transportation model projecting out to 2050. So we had today's snapshot, but also future snapshot. And obviously those things can, like you said, we can amend the current project that we're talking about. The current thing we're talking about amending is the local CTP. This action tonight will have no impact on the actual NCDOT project. That's another action. That's not what we're discussing tonight, just to be crystal clear on what the action will do tonight. The action will only change our locally adopted CTP and not the actual NCDOT project. That will take a STIP amendment that you all would have to create an action, and then the MPO, CRTBO would have to take action on.
Right. And that's probably a conversation though several years down the road as things begin to shake out. So to Larry's point, even though I tend to agree with him, but the data and the modeling and all says right now we're in pretty good shape. We're looking in pretty good shape in the future, but things always could change. So we have a time frame here in which to deal with. So we can take action on this. It's really a policy statement. It's not going to hurt anything at this stage in the game. And as things develop, it can, with the board, future boards could always come back to this and amend it. I'm just trying to get Larry on board in terms of understanding that if developments change and lean more towards his thinking, then the board can make that modification.
And the idea was that we wanted folks, particularly coming from Union County, to choose to go around Matthews, to get on 485 and go to Independence Boulevard, to get on Graylock Ridge Road and go around the McKee Road extension, Weddington Road interchange. All these things are intended to get folks to move around the town that don't need to be here, so that the people that live here can move a little more freely. But yeah, it certainly could be amended by a future board, but
time will tell.
Dana, I just want to make sure, aren't we also planning to come to the board though in another month or two to talk about a tip change for this?
Only if that's up to the board. I'm doing this for exercise of the MPO so that we can have it in the MTP to test the waters and see how it would score. So, if you all want me to come back and, have a full discussion about the options for making that tip amendment, that's fine. And I'm happy to do that. That's, up to the pleasure of the board, I assume.
Yeah, I just didn't want Commissioner Urban to think that, I don't want him to be surprised if we talk about this again in the next few months on a bigger level.
And that's fine, but understanding where the funding is in all this, and the fact that I think it was back when Paul was mayor, the deferral of this conversation altogether with NCDOT, we've got years in advance now that we're having this conversation. This is not, has to be done overnight, correct?
Correct. Right now, it is not programmed for construction until 2031.
Okay.
I think we lost Commissioner Whitley. Oh wait, he's back.
I don't know.
Get some high test gasoline for his computer. Larry, can you hear us?
I can't hear y'all. I don't know what's going on with my computer tonight.
At least we hear him.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll
make
further
discussion.
Mayor, before you make a motion, could I say this too? All right, so now last week, a couple of weeks ago, we saw that the civil line is could possibly come down Matthew Street, right down, which is gonna farther block off traffic that way, if that be the route. Even more now, I see why continue to making that, and I'm adamant about that because, a long time ago, I was for the super street, but I just can't not wrap my mind around, and you can make the motion to make my mind around west coming into the Trade Street, four lanes, dropping to 2 lanes. It just don't make sense just for that little short bit of road. Now,
again, the idea is that folks that don't need to come into Matthews are going to get onto 485 and go over to Independence Boulevard, which will be an expressway. And if I was from Union County coming down Monroe Road, that's where I would go. I wouldn't want to drive through Matthews and hit all the stop signs. I'd get on the expressway and go 60 miles an hour downtown. That'd be the way to go. People aren't going to want to come here. And I think if we build it, they will come. If we build 4 lanes, they'll come. If we build 8 lanes, they'll come. We don't necessarily want it to be easy to drive through here. We want people to go around Matthews that don't need to be here, in my opinion.
I understand that, Mayor, but isn't this the lovely town that we love so much that we want people to see our town and visit our town? And then on one hand, we want to keep them out of our town. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I use Monroe Road. I use that a whole lot rather than getting on Independent. And I know when we get that 4-lane built through there, I just don't want us to bottleneck Matthews just for that one little section and keep everybody else's moving flow, and we'll just bottleneck. And that's all I'll say.
The area model said it would not be a bottleneck.
It's not going to happen.
I don't want all those people from Union County driving through Matthews. I don't know how everybody else feels. I mean, but if you build a superhighway, it will be a superhighway. Right. Even if you make it a little 2-lane tight road, those people are going to drive 80 miles an hour down Monroe Road. That's exactly what's going to happen. It's happening right now. So my thought is slow them down, make them go around.
Well, we've had many citizen input groups work years on this, and the idea was to encourage folks that we certainly want anybody that has business or needs to be here to come through, but just going to, if you're just going downtown Charlotte and you want to put the pedal to the metal and fly through Matthews, we prefer that you go on Independence Boulevard. I would think most people would.
Or 485.
You're speaking, Commissioner Miller, so you must want to make a motion.
I was taking pause. I'll make a motion to amend the Town of Matthews adopted CTP by changing East John Street recommendation from 4-lane widening to 2-lane improvements for the section between Trade Street and Graylock Ridge Road, and that we change Weddington Road recommendation from no improvement to 2-lane improvements for the section between Pleasant Plains Road to I-485.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Miller, a second by Commissioner Bland. Any further discussion? Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
I think he's locked again.
I believe he's frozen. Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Let's see if we can get Commissioner Whitley back. I suspect, based on what he just said, he would vote no, but we can't vote for him, so we need him to. We'll wait just a minute to see if he's going to make it back. Must have poor service or something where he's at, I guess. Captain Obvious comment. But.
I'll call him and see if I can get him on my cell, because he could vote by cell.
Wait, there you go. Go ahead, Hazen.
Okay, I'll try to reach him by cell.
If that works, you'll need him to identify himself before he makes his vote. He'll just need to say his name and then make his vote.
He's back. He's back. Larry, you back? Can you hear us, Larry? Larry, can you hear us?
I can hear y'all, but I can't see nobody.
So Lori, can he vote by voice only?
He can, if you guys want to reiterate what the motion was. And then Larry, when you make your motion, please just state your name and then what your vote is.
All right.
Jeff, you want to repeat the motion?
Jeff, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now, Mayor?
Yeah, we can hear you, but did you hear the motion the first time?
I heard pretty much all I needed to know. I'm voting no. I'm voting no. Larry, Wayne, Whitley, no.
Okay. Is that sufficient, Lori?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, and I am going to vote affirmative, so that passes 6-1 with Commissioner Whitley voting in opposition. Thank you. All right, we already did E, so we'll go on to F. Consider amending the name of Stumptown Park. So let me speak on that. I did briefly earlier. This request kind of came up organically from many of the veterans I was talking to as they were making the improvements in Stumptown Park. That being said, I think that the cart has been put before the horse, and this definitely, the first call should have been to Corey King. And I was actually writing Corey an email when he wrote his email regarding this. So Corey was correct. This should go through Parks and Rec, as I stated earlier. I will reiterate the one comment that I said. I'm cognizant of the fact that I looked up today. We have about 325,000 World War II veterans that are still alive. They're almost all certainly at least in their 90s. Some of them are over 100. I met quite a few at the Rotary lunch that we had for the veterans, quite a few World War II veterans in our town. And it's expected that within 5 years, that 325,000 is going to dwindle to 60,000. So these heroes are dying at a very quick rate. Again, they're all at least in their 90s. And so I hope that if we end up renaming a park, I hope we will do something a little more quickly than 5 years or 10 years from now, because again, folks from the Korean conflict, World War II are not going to be with us. So we'd like to honor them while they're alive, if possible. So take that in consideration. But all that being said, Corey, I want to apologize. I should have reached out to you first thing when this came up. It was brought up at a previous agenda just for information. And we will wait until Parks and Rec fully vets this, gets full public input from everybody they want to. And it isn't urgent that we do this right away. We can do this sometime during the first quarter of 2021, have a vote on it after we've had full discussion, full vetting by everybody. So that's my recommendation. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on it. Everybody good with that? Everybody getting thumbs up. So yeah, so we kind of got the cart before the horse. We're gonna rearrange things. And again, Corey, I apologize. Let's get it right. Get all the public input we need to do on that. Let me move on to the mayor's report. It's getting really late, way past Hazen's bedtime. I saw him yawning. He's ready for his last born milk. Bedtime. A couple things. December 5th, at or about 7 p.m., I am told, we will have the virtual tree lighting. And I need to kind of whisper this so you don't say this too loudly, but it's not going to be live. It's going to literally be like we're going to play a tape, but it will be a nice event on December 5th around 7 p.m. The information will be on the town website. We're going to have some local performers, and there will be a tree lighting, and it'll be nice for the children. It's unfortunate that we can't meet in person this year. I've had more than one person come to me and say at the various hometown holiday events we've had that this really looks like a Hallmark movie stage or whatever. You know, it's just so beautiful with the lights. I remember the one year we had the fake snow and Santa Claus and all the lights. It's just really a beautiful thing, and I'm really looking forward to next year when we for certain can do this in person. So if you're able, please participate or at least watch that. It's going to be a brief thing. I think it's good to watch. And then I want to mention also that several of us, commissioners and town staff, are participating in the 21-day Racial Equity Challenge, which will wind up tomorrow. And I think everybody's really enjoyed that. We've had some real honest and open dialogue with people of different races, and I think it's been really, really helpful and a good experience for all that participated. We'll move on to the attorney's report.
No report, Mayor.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to the, I'm getting kind of punch drunk, I'm sorry. Town manager, do you have a report, sir?
I do have something I want to bring up. So when we went over the budget, when we adopted the budget last year, one of the things we did is we appropriated 3% in a line item of like $175,000 that we could deploy January 1st, 2021. But the board wanted to hold it off, like, okay, let's wait and see what happens with everything with our budget and all that stuff. And we heard a report today from Assistant Manager Hawk that our revenues continue to be strong. So my plan is to bring this back as a formal agenda item on December 14th. And as a reminder, our employees got no raises July 1st. What we're proposing to do is do an across the board increase if the board's comfortable with this, but we would recommend across the board 3% raise. It would do two things. It would raise the salary ranges up 3%, and everybody, if you were meeting expectations, you would get a 3% raise. One of the things some board members don't know, they weren't on the board then, but when we did our latest salary study, the intention was to be at 60% of the market. We went out and did a very quick cursory survey, and we're 4 1/3% below the 50% level. So this 3% increase would still put us behind 50%, but it would bring us up much closer, and we'd become much more competitive with like police officers and some of our other positions. And I wanted to know if the board members had any concerns with that type of strategy.
Sorry, I've got Larry on the phone. I'll be back in a second.
Point of clarification, Hazen, you use the term 50%, but it's 60%, correct?
That's what our goal is. And so, so what happened, I guess it's been 2 years. It's funny how time goes by, but our goal was to be at 60% of the market. We achieved that when we did all this. What we didn't do is we gave raises, but we didn't bump up the salary scale. And I think in the meantime, a lot of towns, including Stallings is a good example, a lot of folks around us went through these pay classification studies. Police officers were a prime example of getting a lot of pressure for lack of participants. And now we're finding we're over 4% below the average, and we're excluding Charlotte, by the way. We're taking them out because their salaries are so high. So we are not close to 60% at this point.
We're 4% below 50%.
That's correct.
I've got a question, and I'll get you in a second, Commissioner McCool. I've been asked by a lot of people how our budget is so darn healthy during COVID, and I know it goes back to what percentage of what we get from what, but there's a lot of towns that are really, really, really struggling, and we seem to be doing fine. Is it because we have such excellent staff?
Well, we did budget conservatively, to our credit. We're not in the water and sewer business, right? That in some parts of the state is really hit hard. 60% of our budget is property tax. which is what they would call it inelastic. It's very, very stable. The one that would be the biggest threat is sales tax, but we are not seeing that. And I think it's because, the Charlotte area is among probably the top 15 most vibrant metropolitan areas in the country. So I think some of it's location.
There's some towns down on the East Coast that you're aware of that are basically ready to go belly up. I mean, they're out of funds.
They've never come out of the recession. To be blunt about it, they never came out of the recession.
Well, it really is a tribute, I think, to staff and really our boards that we've been conservative. And
well, that's true.
Aren't they electric cities though? Most of those ones that are going belly up.
A lot of them are and do water and sewer. By the way, I have Commissioner Whitley on my phone so he can hear. Commissioner McCool, you had a comment?
Are we going to bring this up in another meeting? Because I'll leave my comments for next meeting because it's so late.
I am. I just wanted y'all to know the plan would be, we have so many employees that are doing their jobs. We want to give across the board 3% raise and also shift the pay classification 3% on the minimum and the maximum. That's going to bring us more competitive with our competitors. And it gives people a 3% raise beginning January 1st.
And I think the important thing is we have the money.
The money is set aside in a line item, just sitting there for the board to take action.
I'll just
we
say
planned this back at the planning conference to put this money aside just to be sure that things didn't go all to hell and blow up with COVID, and we would be in a position where we were going, oh my God, but we planned ahead. And so that's what that money's there for. Correct.
I remember you had me by my tie and you were shaking me.
Nothing like that.
No, I think you are a big proponent of being conservative, and I think it was wise.
So here we are. Now we need to do what we said we would do.
Yeah,
I
think so.
All right, that's all I got.
Anything else from anyone? Other than a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn by Commissioner Bland, second by Commissioner McCool. I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Whitley, do you want to adjourn? Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
And I vote yes too. Apologize for this meeting taking so long, but we got a lot done. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving. Be safe. Talk to y'all soon.
Have a great holiday.
Be safe. Happy holidays.